And Ms. Probst, would you take us through a roll call, please? I know we're a little shorthanded today, but we have enough people. So.
Chairman,
Yes, I'm here.
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 Very well. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a moment to open the meeting to the public. Anyone who would like to address this board on land use matters that are not on the agenda this evening may do so at this time. And tell us your name, please, and your address.
My name is Atul Darji, Atul Kumar Darji, at 5 Charlotte Drive, Bridgewater, New Jersey.
Okay.
The reason
And there's a sign-in sheet there too, is there not?
there is,
Okay, you can do that when you're done speaking. Sign in.
sure.
You can speak first and then sign in.
I'll speak first and I'll sign in. How's that?
That's what I just said. Thank you.
Terrific. All right, so the reason I'm standing here is because I thought Cafe Amelia was to be here today. I checked
Yes.
earlier in the week. Apparently, you guys changed it recently, which
Yes.
is fine. I just wanted to let the board know this is going to be impacting our entire neighborhood, safety of our
So it's a
children that are all
pending
there.
application.
So this is not on the agenda,
So
that's why I wanted to
We really
talk
can't
about it.
take any statements about that application. Okay? You have plenty of time. When that comes back before the board again, there'll be a time where you can come and you can make a statement to the board. You can question their witnesses, but it's just not appropriate for us to take statements from you now. Okay?
Okay, so in generally, to the board, you're here to protect the citizens of Bridgewater, and I would tell you to exercise your right to actually deny applications when they're not permitted for a particular use.
Well, I think you need a little help. So, as a matter of fact, Mr. Weidelli and I were speaking. Mr. Weidelli is one of our most experienced board members. I was speaking with Mr. Oler about the same topic. The purpose of the Zoning Board of Adjustment is to hear cases that are not ordinarily permitted in certain zones. So if you would like to do something that is permitted, you'll end up typically before the planning board because it's a permitted use and they're looking to make sure that it's compliant with other criteria. Anybody who has a legitimate need to develop land, who would like to ask for some variance that is from the master plan, from the current zoning and so on, has the ability to come to this board, and as long as they adhere to all the rules, they can apply to have something that's not permitted, and that's why we hear these cases. We have a legal obligation to hear those cases and to evaluate them individually. And I think if you're under the impression that because it's not a permitted use in that zone, that we shouldn't hear it, that's incorrect.
I'm not saying not to hear it.
Okay.
What I said is you should exercise your right to deny it.
Well, we have to exercise the right to be...
After you hear it.
We have to exercise the right to be fair, to
Absolutely.
hear the testimony.
Did I say not be fair? I did not say that. I said
Listen,
you have
I'm
the
not
right
here to
hear
argue
it.
with you.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying what I said.
Yes.
You're trying to put words into my mouth, and I'm not
No,
saying that.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
All I'm saying, sir, is you hear them, it's perfectly fine. However, there's nothing on the book saying you have to automatically approve stuff.
That's correct.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
That's-
fair enough.
Is that fair?
Well, except
Except.
that...
Except you have to automatically
there's a
prove what?
standard of law, right? If the applicant satisfies the applicable standard for the variances that they're asking for, then the board would be certainly in its power and would be correct to approve it. And if it is approved, someone who objected to it has the right to appeal that to the Superior Court. And if it's denied, the applicant has the right to appeal that to the Superior Court, where everything we do gets reviewed by a
There's
judge.
due diligence processes, there's definitely processes for appealment, absolutely. But I'm just talking about this board here, right? I'm looking out for the township that I love to live here with my neighbors, our children that walk these streets, that have no sidewalks on our streets, and I'm just asking you to look out for them. That's all I'm saying.
And I
Okay.
appreciate your concerns, and we are here to look out for them. You'll find that everybody here is a volunteer, a resident of Bridgewater. Everyone here has a sensitivity to the neighborhoods on which applications are made. So you're in good hands. What we are obligated to do is to not make decisions that might be deemed arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable.
I wouldn't ask you to do that.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put my name.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this board on a land use matter that's not on the agenda? And be advised, if you're talking about cases that are before the board, we can't hear you because we, in fact, have to wait for that hearing.
Good evening, Carolyn Joya, 1402 Paley Court. I am learning a lot. I've been to a few zoning board meetings, but I am still learning. And I was wondering if you could explain to me, I see people here all the time. There's a different group of people every time. I know we have regular members, and I know we have alternate members. On a case that's going on to its third hearing or its sixth hearing or whatever, how do you determine who gets to vote on that, especially if there was a change in the board at the beginning of the year?
Those are two different questions, but go
Okay,
ahead,
that's
Mr.
fine.
Oler.
There are 7 regular members. Those members are the first to vote on every application. Alternates do not vote, right? Now, if one of the 7 members are absent or some other reason ineligible to vote, then we go to the first alternate, right? And we follow that same order, so if there's a second regular member absent or not eligible to vote, then we go to the second alternate, the third, and the fourth, okay? So we always really want to present an applicant with the opportunity to have 7 votes.
Okay, and then on to my second question. What about people who only joined in January, or if they haven't attended all the hearings? How do you?
So if the hearings preceded their membership on the board, they have the opportunity to either watch the YouTube video or read the transcript. And then they sign an affidavit or a certification that says that they did that, and then they are then eligible.
Okay, and if the transcript doesn't come out till the night of the vote and the person missed the previous meeting, how do you handle something like that?
The
'Cause-
YouTube video is available.
Oh, it would be video. So video, they would have to watch the video if the
Or,
transcript's not available.
Correct.
Okay. So I think that answers everything.
Okay,
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
sure thing.
And tell us who you are, please, and your address.
Hey, my name is James Meister. I'm from Branchburg. I'm at 262 Bald Eagle Drive, so I'm still a neighbor here, despite being the town over. Should I add my name at the end, you said?
I'm sorry, yes.
Perfect. So I just have a real quick question here. I understand with your roles here, it's very important that you guys serve in the best interest of the people, which is why we really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to all of our point of views and our perspectives on this issue. This is all very important, especially to people like me who are in college. The issue of public transportation and even on our public roads, a lot of traffic concerns are coming up, especially with more congestion. And I think as we increase the amount of warehouses or other new buildings in our area, and we don't balance that out with better public infrastructure, will cause more and more upset with the public. So that's just my minor concern there, but also a major important concern. What I also want to ask, I'm not sure who to ask this to, but this is about redevelopment. Has the board been looking at places like abandoned strip malls and other locations to develop storage facilities and warehouses instead of empty open space areas that have trees and open floodplain areas that can cause more flooding if built on?
So this board doesn't really have the power or the authority to amend or modify zoning ordinances, such as what you're speaking about. That would lie with the town council and the planning board.
So to my knowledge, that as the zoning board of adjustment, you are hearing adjustments to if a private industry wants to build on a property that's zoned a specific way, you guys hear whether to adjust that, correct?
Correct.
So in the scenario that they want to build on an area that is a floodplain, have you been looking into your options when denying those claims and looking more into redevelopment areas that could be turned into those warehouses instead of using environmental floodplains?
Again, this board doesn't determine what other uses might go on a property. We hear the application
Right.
that comes before us only.
I want to ask your leniency towards those issues, though. Like, if you hear an application that is on a redevelopment area versus an application that's on a floodplain area, is your leniency to support a redevelopment application over a flood?
You're giving us a lot of hypotheticals with a lot of dependencies and complexities. To answer you in a general way, the board evaluates each case individually as it's presented to us. If there includes on this parcel of land a hypothetical floodplain, then the question is how much of that land is occupied by the floodplain? Is there something that can be developed without impacting the floodplain? So we go through a lot of, you'll find in talking with the professional engineers, both that work for us and that work for the applicants, they go through a lot of tedious and very specific studies to tell us what's the best opportunity given the application.
Got you. And my final question is, and this is about trust in the zoning board and understanding where all of your backgrounds are in. Is this a good time to ask what each of your backgrounds are and how you got to this zoning board? I'm curious what your...
It's not a good time to ask,
your
but
private industrial, your private, occupations.
you want to see our resume? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
And the answer is it's not appropriate for you to ask that question, but the council appoints everyone on this board. So the council has the opportunity to review our applications, our backgrounds, our experience, how long we've lived in the community, what professional insights and credentials we might bring to this board, and then they choose to make an appointment, and if they do so and they approve it, then you'll find us here.
Got you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate
You're welcome. Thank you.
it. My pleasure.
You're going to be moving to Bridgewater soon?
Maybe.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting, and thank you for your comments. We have some minutes that we're going to approve, and we don't have the resolution yet for CX Tower, correct?
Correct.
And what else do we have?
Nor on the Shah.
Okay, so just the minutes from the March 20th. So can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move.
I will make a motion to approve
I already did, she can say.
the,
You can second it, Mrs. Amin.
who
Mr. Wiley made the motion.
seconded?
Okay, very well. So we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Very well. So moving forward, we've had some changes in the agenda, as some people have already noted. We were going to be hearing both Cafe Amelia's application and the application for the self-storage facility on Milltown Road. With respect to the Cafe Amelia application, they asked for an adjournment, and I believe, Mr. Oler, they asked also for an extension of time. Can you or Ms. Probst fill us in on what was going on with that?
Yeah, I'm going to rely on Nancy. I don't have that letter.
They requested the adjournment, which the board will grant, and I requested an extension of time, which they returned this evening, or received this evening. They will be heard on November 10th.
So for the members of the public who were here specifically for Cafe Amelia's application, that meeting will now be held, you said November 10th?
November 10th.
November 10th. And you're welcome, of course, to come back for that meeting at that time.
Yeah, And just to dovetail on that, it's November 10th at 7 PM in this room, and there'll be no further notices from the applicant. Okay.
So again, moving forward, we're here tonight, however, we're into the third hearing for application number 25-022-ZB Nan Realty Holdings. This is block 165, lot 2, 360 Milltown Road. This is for a preliminary and final site plan and a D variance. So with that, Mr. Silbert is here representing the applicant.
Yes,
You would like to reintroduce yourself to everybody that's here and
absolutely. So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals, members of the public. My name is Michael Silbert, and I'm an attorney at the law firm Murphy, Schiller & Wilkes, LLP. I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Nan Realty Holdings, LLC. It's good to be back before the board, and I'm excited to update the board with some of the updates we have this evening. So, as the board will recall, and just to refresh the memory of the members of the public that are here this evening, this matter was previously heard by the board on March 24th, 2026, and again on June 9th, 2026, at which time it was carried to tonight's hearing. So the application seeks preliminary and final major site plan approval with D and C variance relief for the construction of a climate-controlled self-storage facility on property located at 360 Milltown Road, Block 165, Lot 2, in the C3 Office and Service Zone District. We left off on June 9th. We were in the middle of presenting architectural testimony through our architect, Ms. Susan DeHart. And specifically, we were in the midst of receiving feedback from the board and the board's professionals, Ms. Sarmat, and that evening, Mr. Burr, regarding the architectural design and architectural layout of the proposed building. And due to time constraints that evening, which ended the June 9th hearing, Ms. Sarmat was gracious enough to subsequently outline some of her key concerns and in an updated review memo, which was disseminated to the applicant and presumably disseminated to the board. That updated review memo is dated July 17th, 2026. And we very much appreciate that, so that we were able to take that memorandum back and come prepared tonight with revisions. So what I wanted to convey to the board and to the members of the public, as well as the board professionals, is that we heard you, and we feel that that you gave us some very constructive feedback, and I feel confident that we've addressed that feedback head on. We went back to the drawing board quite literally and substantially redesigned the architectural elements of the project. So in connection with our July 31st, 2026 resubmission package, we submitted revised architectural plans. And just very briefly, I'll walk the board through our main focus areas with that resubmission. So from an aesthetic standpoint, the architectural design was substantially reworked. The prior design utilized vertical block panel elements with a dark accent color palette, and we've replaced that with a new natural, horizontally emphasized aesthetic, as we'll get into in our testimony this evening, and Mr. Hart will walk you through those revised architectural features, again, from an aesthetic standpoint. As the board will recall, the exterior roll-up doors on the ground floor were a topic of discussion, and the revised architectural plans also attempted to address this by integrating the doors into the base materials and redesigning its overall color palette so that it more is in line with the surrounding exterior palette color. One item that was not reflected in our resubmission package, but which we would like to present via supplemental exhibits, which I will present digitally, is a design option for the north elevation or the rear of the building, so that, as was identified in Ms. Sarmad's July 17th memo, and as the board will recall, both board engineer Mr. Burr and Mr. Franco specifically identified the blank north facade as an area of concern at that June 9th hearing. So in response, we're hoping that we can address that concern tonight with an alternative design incorporating faux windows on the north elevation. So we'll present both options to the board, and the board can evaluate the building with rear windows and without, and we're happy to accommodate the board's preference. As a supplemental exhibit to the July 31st resubmission package, so not included in that package, we've also generated digital renderings of the proposed building from multiple vantage points, including the Vanderveer Road vantage point. So at the last hearing, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Franco and other board members and board professionals specifically requested that we attempt to show what the building would look like from Vanderveer Road and beyond the existing railroad from that viewpoint. So we're prepared with that, and we'll present that shortly. At both the March 24th hearing and the June 9th hearing, there was extensive discussion regarding the width of the stabilized turf emergency fire access area. As I'm sure the board recalls, that's that area behind the building that would abut against the railroad. And Fire Marshal Tom Scalera had originally requested a 24-foot wide fire lane, and at the last hearing, we had proposed a 23-foot wide fire lane, and that was the maximum that was achievable based upon the prior building footprint. I represented to the board and actually passed out an email exhibit with Mr. Scalera that the 23-foot width was acceptable to him, but it was suggested that at the June 9th hearing that the applicant should really just reconsider a redesign of the building to yield the full 24-foot wide access lane. And so we've accepted that guidance. You'll note in our resubmission package that we're not asking the board or the fire marshal to negotiate or compromise on this fire safety issue. So we've reduced the building footprint to provide the full 24-foot wide stabilized turf emergency fire access area. So that results in a modest reduction in the building footprint and floor area, but it nonetheless is a reduction. So we've decreased the floor area ratio relief that we're seeking. We're going from previously proposed 36.8% FAR to 36.5% FAR. That's as revised, and otherwise the building remains the same, at least in terms of massing and footprint, other than that modification. I'll remind the board that the proposal before the board this evening is compliant with lot coverage and building height. From a lot coverage standpoint, we're proposing 36.6%, which is a little more than half of what is otherwise permitted on the property. Just addressing some other concerns from the board from the June 9th hearing, particularly Mr. Vecchio, I believe, raised this important question regarding egress and the location of the emergency staircase. So we've also relocated that. So the staircase that was a concern for Mr. Vecchio at the last hearing was previously located at the northeast corner and spilled out into the rear of the building into that emergency stabilized turf area. So we relocated that to the northeast corner of the building. So now that it spills out to the front of the building, we believe we've addressed that concern that now, if God forbid there was an emergency, anybody inside the building would be able to congregate outside in the front in a safe area. Another representation that was made at the June 9th hearing was with respect to the proposed landscaping. So I had made the representation that we would increase the landscaping on site, and through the site dimensional plan that was submitted to the board, we followed through with that commitment. So now the plan depicts 50% of the required replacement trees on the property. So that constitutes a vast improvement over what was previously proposed. And should this be approved as a condition of approval, we're committed to continuing to work at enhancing the landscape buffering and the landscape plan to the satisfaction of the board's professionals. So, Mr. Chairman, in terms of where we go from here this evening, I'll just remind members of the public that on March 24th, we presented 2 complete segments of our expert testimony in support of this application. The board heard from the applicant's civil engineer, Mr. Robert Michello. Mr. Michello testified to the existing conditions and the proposed conditions, and testified to the site plan before the board, as well as the site circulation and site-related features. Mr. Michello was subject to cross-examination by the board members, questions from the board and the board's professionals, and was open to the public for questions at that time. We also presented the traffic testimony of Mr. Corey Chase from Dynamic Traffic. Mr. Chase testified that and I'm just reiterating what the testimony was, testified that the proposed self-storage facility generates a maximum of only 14 trips during peak hours, which is less than 20% of what the Department of Transportation considers a significant increase in traffic. He confirmed that the facility constitutes approximately 1 trip every 3 to 4 minutes during peak period. He testified that despite the size of the proposed self-storage facility, its traffic generation would be equivalent to that of a 3,000 square foot medical office use. That use was selected because it's one of the permitted uses in the C3 zone. So from an FAR standpoint, based upon existing conditions, more than 66,000 square feet of new medical office space would be permitted on the site. And again, while the proposed self-storage facility is seeking an FAR variance, it would generate traffic equivalent to that of only a 3,000 square foot medical office use, which is a permitted use. Mr. Chase, on the March 24th hearing, also testified that the proposed parking supply of 75 spaces was sufficient from both an ITE and a Bridgewater Township ordinance standpoint. And likewise, to Mr. Michello, he was subject to cross-examination, questions from the board, and the public was apprised of the opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Chase. So tonight, I anticipate recalling Ms. DeHart to complete her architectural testimony, including presenting the revised architecturals, the renderings, the floor plans, as well as addressing the board's and the board's professionals' remaining questions, as well as addressing those questions from members of the public. Following Ms. DeHart, I intend to call our professional planner, Ms. Kristen Shepard of Cafone Consulting Group, so that she can provide the planning justifications, put on the proofs on the record in support of our application for D1 use variance relief and D4 FAR variance relief, as well as the number of bulk variances that we're seeking this evening. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to reserve the right to call additional witnesses or experts if deemed necessary over the course of the hearing. And just another thing that came up at the last hearing that was interesting. So at the June 9th hearing, there was an approval extension on the agenda for another self-storage facility that this board previously approved. I recognize that this board did not, that all the members that currently sit on this board may not have been on the board back in 2024 when that self-storage application was approved. I'm referring to the Chimney Rock Self-Storage LLC application. And while all of the members on this board weren't present in 2024, that applicant did come back before the board. They requested an extension. The board granted that extension. Universally accepted, and I've said this as a land use attorney all the time if members in the public point to other applications. Every application stands on its own merits. It rises and falls on its own merits. We have the burden to prove to the board that our application satisfies the variance burden and the variances that we're seeking. I do believe it's helpful context for the board just to note that there was significant FAR relief granted by way of that application. Different zone, different property. The board granted 90.5% FAR for that application, even though that.
Michael, I really have to advise the board that any prior approval, even for a similar use, is just completely irrelevant to your application. And I think the only thing that might have some relevance are the conditions that were imposed on that application, right? But you're dealing with completely different design, different property, different topography. So, you know, it just has no relevance to your application. So in essence, it doesn't matter that that got approved.
Okay, I'll move on. That's no problem, Mr. Oler. So just to conclude my introduction, and I thank the board for allowing me to provide the overview to the board and to the public. Just to speak to the legal standard when considering an FAR variance, and Mr. Chairman, you touched upon the fact that there's a legal standard attached to all variances that the board reviews. So the legal standard in considering, by way of example, an FAR variance is not simply, does the math exceed what's permitted in the zone? So in the context of our application, we know that the zone permits a 30% FAR. We acknowledge that our proposed FAR exceeds it modestly. But the real legal question for the board, what the board's supposed to consider when considering a variance, at least with respect to the negative criteria for an FAR variance, is whether the site can accommodate the proposed FAR overage without creating a substantial detriment to the public good or impairing the intent or purpose of the zone plan. So, we've contended that the FAR overage does not translate into the impacts that FAR restrictions are intended to present. You'll hear that through our planning testimony this evening. And the FAR overage, which we've continued to represent to the board, is really a mathematical consequence of providing a basement that we don't feel that members of the public will be able to ever see from the roadway. We've represented to the board that it doesn't create a burden on the community, does not materially impact traffic generation, doesn't impact building height, building footprint, lot coverage, all of the types of things that an FAR restriction, by way of example, are intended to prevent against, namely overdevelopment. So again, I thank the board, and I'm ready to proceed with our first witness. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Silbert. Who would you like to bring up first?
I'd like to recall Susan DeHart, our architect, if I may.
Ms. DeHart, I'm going to ask you to stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And, before you go into any of your, substantive questions, can you just tell us, Ms. DeHart, that is your license still current in the state of New Jersey? It is. All right, thank you.
Are we having microphone issues?
Testing. Nope. I
Nope.
think it's working, but why don't you use this one? This one's very reliable.
Okay.
So Ms. DeHart, you testified at the June 9th hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you listened to the feedback that you received from the board, board professionals, members of the public that evening? And, correct?
Yes.
And you've also had a chance to review the July 17th planning review memo from Ms. Sarmed?
I have.
And so on my screen right now, is it correct we have an architectural plan set that was resubmitted to the board on July 31st?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And one of the comments from the board at the June 9th hearing was concern from board members regarding the actual unit count, meaning that the board did not want to see placeholders. They wanted to get an idea of the precise number of units that would be likely to exist in a building of this nature,
Yes.
this size. Can you walk the board through the first plan sheet that was resubmitted to the board on July 31st?
Sure. So what we've done here is internally our team discussed in more detail what the projected breakdown of units is most likely to be. I want to reiterate that we can't commit to a specific layout and breakdown at this time because that's going to be dependent on the management company when the time comes. But we've made an attempt to show what we believe is closest to what would actually be in the layout of the building when it gets constructed. So that's what you see here. There's a breakdown in the lower right-hand corner of sheet A1 that talks about the different quantity of different sizes of units and the percentage of those units. So right now, the overall total of units is 630, which is substantially more than what we talked about the last time, but that's as a result of introducing quite a few smaller storage units. So it's just the layout is more or less the same. The circulation has changed a little bit to provide access to more smaller units. As previously mentioned, the footprint has actually gotten a little bit smaller. So we're just doing our best to show what we believe to be the most accurate breakdown that we can give at this
Didn't hear you
time.
before. What was the total number of units estimated proposed?
630 at this time.
And also, the picture I was looking at before, and the one I have here, it's going to be a total of 4 floors, including the basement,
That is correct, yes.
and the second and third are going to be the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I realized I wasn't
wh-
speaking
wh-
into this.
Why do you have that many units? We used to have something like 290. They were bigger in size. Now we made them smaller and 630. What was the reason for doing that?
This comes down to the business model breakdown. There's metrics that go into that, and I believe there was a storage management company that advised us in that.
Yeah, the applicant's consulting with a number of self-storage operators, and based upon the feedback we received at the last hearing, we wanted to provide the board with an accurate screenshot of what these operators are doing. Should a board, approve a blank shell, what are these operators providing on the inside? How many 10 by 30 units? How many 5 by 5 units? So what we're presenting, I understand that it's 630 is a large number. That's what self-storage operators, based upon the market demand, at least as they represent it to us, that's what is reflected in this matrix, so that the board gets a accurate screenshot of what a self-storage operator how they would utilize this space. And just as a reminder to the board, something that's I just wanted to note for the record again is that there was a request at the last hearing that we cap the maximum unit size at 10 by 30 or 300 square feet. So again, I'll just put on the record, we can affirm and commit to doing that. You'll notice on this revised architectural layout, the floor plan layout, that none of the units exceed that. So,
So if I may, just,
I do have a question, follow-up question.
no, go ahead.
See, since we have lot more units, that means there will be lot more people who will be renting out the space, right? So
No,
will that make a difference in the traffic or anything? That's more units, more
Yeah.
people renting.
Yeah, so the testimony that we've offered thus far through our traffic engineer and through the principal of the applicant is that the number of units does not translate to traffic volume. That we look at the square footage of the facility to estimate
So, Michael, excuse me, but is your traffic engineer here to testify to that?
our traffic. He is not, and he's already testified to that.
I'm not sure we got that point, honestly. So you're saying that you're increasing the number, not increasing because you didn't really give us a number, but you're saying that the maximum number of units in the space will be 630 based on the 4 floors that you have with the
Yes.
new total square footage, and that whether it was 630 units or 400 units, you're saying that the traffic anticipation is based on the floor square footage, not the number of units?
Based upon the floor area. So what you heard the principal of the applicant testify to at the June 9th hearing is that a member of the public has the opportunity to rent many units. Many members of the public do rent a number of units. So it's just a matter of if a member of the public really needs a 10 by 30 and they're all taken, and if 5 by 5 is available, they're going to take a number of 5 by 5 units, hopefully in close proximity to one another. But what Mr. Chase testified to is that the ITE does not look at the number of units within a facility to determine the volume of traffic. And in the transcript, you'll see that the principal of the applicant also testified that in his experience that the smaller the unit, the less likely the unit owner or unit renter is to return to the property. Based upon his experience, the more frequent returns to the property is when they are renting larger self-storage units. Well, larger self-storage units translates into less overall units on site, but it's not an apples to apples comparison. Units does not equal volume, traffic volume. That's not what what ITE data suggests. We don't have any data to support that those two items are connected.
See, the other question I had was, when you have this five by five back to back, right? Then there is a little opening between this 5 and this 1, so that if you rent only one unit, then the other person who rents the other unit has access to yours. See, the way the layout is.
The units are contained by metal walls. So there's metal panels that divide the units inside the building, and then there's a cage on top, so it's secure. You can only access your own individual unit that you're paying for.
Each unit has completely enclosed.
Correct, yes, the walls are enclosed, and then there's a cage on top, which allows for proper sprinkler coverage.
Okay. Let someone else ask.
Mr. Migdala, do you have a question?
Can you remind us what the ITE is?
Yes, ITE is Institute of Transportation Engineers, I believe, right? Mr. Rochelle? Institute of Transportation Engineers.
And that's their standard for storage buildings.
That's their standard for storage, for self-storage, and that happens to be, by virtue of the ordinance, I believe it's subsection 169, because Bridgewater's ordinance does not provide for, we're talking, I don't want to mix apples and oranges, we're talking about traffic volume, but we also relied upon ITE for our parking counts by way of example. So Bridgewater's ordinance in subsection 169 for off-street parking requirements also relies upon ITE's off-street parking requirements for uses that are not included in the ordinance. I only bring it up even though we're talking about traffic volume because the ordinance has accepted ITE standards with respect to parking counts. It would logically follow, or I'd ask the board to think that it logically follows that ITE's traffic generation numbers and analysis would likewise be accepted to Bridgewater Township, to Bridgewater's respective land use boards. I feel like I'm really venturing into the testimony arena.
I think I know what you're saying. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else has a question about that.
Can I, you had the design up before, which I'm looking at now. Can we go back to that one? All right, since the last one, you were talking about it before, you've added quite a few 5x5 storage units here. It's smaller than my pantry and my kitchen. I couldn't even imagine what you would rent a 5x5 for. Did you really? Yeah. All right, I rest my case. I'll go with, but I think there are too many of them in there could that be, to eliminate some of the number, to change that a little bit?
Yeah, if the board is concerned by the quantity of 5x5 units, I think that we would certainly have some flexibility. Again, what you're seeing is a reflection upon what self-storage operators have in their existing.
So if you take the diagram and look at it, and I'm looking at it right here too, basically, in my opinion, I see all the 5x5s now on 4 different floors, because they're a little bit different color, because they're smaller, so it's a little bit darker. I mean, basically, I think that you're just trying to fit them in to add more units instead of making it look like a more workable, type of plan.
I think that from the applicant's standpoint, we're not trying to get the most number of units. If you look at
What it is, when I look at this diagram and every end, you're sneaking in a little 5x5.
Right, but we're not, when we're approaching a self-storage operator, we're approaching them with the amount of floor area that would be accessible to them to have storage units. So we're trying to balance what the board wants to see, which I think is worst case scenario, and an operator might say, well, in Bridgewater Township, we think that 5 by 5, that number of 5 by 5 units is silly. And they might say, we really need to consider doing 55 of them. We don't have an exact amount, but I wanted to provide to the board, based upon the commentary from your engineer, essentially what is the worst from unit count? What is the worst case
This is
scenario?
what I'm looking at.
That's what we've presented to you.
The other thing I'll add, if memory serves, you were talking about the size of the units previously. And there was some concern expressed by the board that having larger sizes might lend itself to a different kind of clientele, which might increase the frequency, or it might potentially offer somebody an opportunity to operate a business out of that, even though it's not permitted. And so they asked for smaller sizes. Well, when you ask for smaller sizes, by definition, you have more units.
Exactly right. So we, by way of example, we reduced the number of 10 by 30s that you saw previously in our prior iteration. If you reduce, because we have the floor area, if you reduce the size of a unit, that translates into additional smaller units. So it's just the relationship is directly correlated with.
Right. Let me ask Mr. Oler a question. If the board were to move further with this application and seek to approve it, how are we going to deal with the number of storage unit issue? Is it meant to be flexible? Is it meant to be a range, or?
I think if the board had a concern that, the number of units might still impact the traffic to the site, you could impose a condition with a maximum number of units.
Right, and I think that's what Mr. Silbert is proposing right now, is the worst case or maximum number of units. And if I heard you correctly, then your traffic engineer has stated that it wouldn't impact his figures or his calculations on the traffic. So what I'm kind of looking for is some guidance. If we were to say the number of units, do we accept a range? I don't think we can work with square footage, but I'm not certain about the number of units. And maybe we'll just hold that question till we have some additional information, unless any of our board professionals have an opinion on how we might move forward, knowing that we have a maximum number, but we might be presented with plans where we have a smaller number of units. I'm not sure what we're supposed, and you don't have to opine if you don't have one, an opinion, but if you do, I'd like to hear it.
Frankly, I don't recall entirely what the traffic engineer's testimony was, which I think a lot of this is linked to, right? If there's a concern about traffic and the traffic study took into account the square footage of the building rather
Yes.
than the number of units, then I think, it's a false conclusion to say that the units are generating it if the traffic study showed something else.
Right.
Without having, I don't have the traffic study in front of me right now, and I don't think the traffic engineer is here right now.
Correct.
Kind of, dispel any of this. So, I think that's what we should rely upon, right? The data and
Right.
that as.
Yeah, I'm moving away from I'm going to accept the fact that the testimony given by the traffic engineer, in my opinion, is acceptable. What I'm looking for is some guidance for the board that says, the worst case is this, what's the number again?
The worst.
630 units. But suppose they come back and say, once we've approved it hypothetically, what guidance can we provide in the approval that would say, oh, it should be a range between 4 and 600 or 3 and 5, whatever it is. I'm not sure how we do this.
I think a maximum is probably
The best way?
most appropriate. Creating a range feels a little bit arbitrary, but if they've identified the maximum, right, if the board feels it's too much, right, then lower the maximum, lower the ceiling on it.
Right.
Right, so I think that's a way to handle it.
Okay, well, if I heard Mr. Silbert, he's responding to some of the concerns the board had in terms of the size of the units and asking for smaller units. And I think we had testimony as well from the operator that smaller units are in demand.
We did hear testimony to that effect, and that's represented by the operators, whether it's, we all know a number of self-storage operators that are providing us a matrix of what they believe the current market is dictating. But like I said, very much open and already agreed to a maximum size restriction. If the unit count is capped, we're open to that too, as long as it isn't like a random arbitrary cap.
Right.
But certainly open to that.
I understand. So right now, we're going to be dealing with a maximum number, and that's how we're going to move forward. Does that make sense, Mr. Oler, from a?
Yes, I was just looking at what we did in the Chimney Rock approval from this board, and actually it appears that in that application, we had a set floor plan. So the condition there was that you couldn't combine units, right? Because we had an actual floor plan that they were looking to get approved. So we didn't have to worry about a maximum, minimum. We knew the number.
We've already said we can't combine units. It's actually not.
Right, and I think, part of that equation is, what's the minimum number, because, the concern is warehousing, right? So, some of the conditions would be you couldn't have a typical warehouse use, there'd be no forklifts in the buildings, right? All of those types of conditions. So, with those types of conditions, I might not be too concerned about the minimum number, right? So
Right.
that, if you're thinking, hey, this is going to turn into a warehouse, we could avoid that with appropriate conditions for that.
Very well. Mr. Franco, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I guess my concern is, from 10 by 10 all the way to 10 by 30, we got 340 units. So that's going to be a single person, so there's definitely an impact on traffic. I can't accept the fact that it won't have an impact on traffic. Now, I do realize that self-storage has minimal traffic compared to warehousing or any other source of business, but you can't say that the ratio that he had used is applicable to just square footage. It's like saying a house that's 2,000 square feet, if it's got 4 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, depending upon the size of the bedrooms, is there an impact of how many people? So it's, to me, there's got to be an impact.
I mean, I don't want to testify, so I have his traffic.
No, I know, and I know your traffic engineer's not here, and
He's not
we
here.
can't have you do that. So it's like,
what I
I
think-
don't know what,
If you're only looking at 14 peak trips, if that's all you're looking at, and again, on the record, the traffic expert did say those 14 peak trips using the same ITE standards as medical office space, which, by the way, doesn't look at the number of examination rooms. It looks at the square footage. It's just, you need some objective standard. I'm not discounting that there's a subjective element to each project. Certainly not.
Right.
But he testified that, in his opinion, this proposal, based upon square footage, is equal to the traffic generation of a 3,000 square foot medical office building. So if the number of units makes this, and I'm pulling an arbitrary number, if it makes it equivalent to a 30,000 square foot medical office building, you're still incredibly below what would otherwise be permitted in the C3 zone, even assuming a terrible situation where the number of units are dictating cars. It's so significantly fewer than what would otherwise be permitted in the zone.
I'd prefer we don't go too far down that road, but rather focus on the testimony of the traffic engineer who was basing his conclusions on square footage and knowledge of the specific industry when we're talking about self-storage facilities being a low-impact type of traffic contributor. So if we stay there, I think we're safer than if we go too far away in the comparisons. And what I'm looking for, and I think I now have, is clarity for the board, knowing that we have a maximum number of units stated, and that when you get to construction, you have your operator, we may be approving, or the plans might be for something that's fewer than what we are having currently. Is that fair? Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Rose?
Just so I'm clear on this, the number of units that you have and the size of the units actually has no bearing on the square footage. The square footage remains the same regardless of what the units look like inside.
Yes.
How did you come to a reduction in your FAR? Where did that come from?
It came from reducing the depth of the building by a foot to get to the 24-foot fire access behind the building. So we literally reduced the footprint of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I have one question for you.
Mrs. Amin, you had another question?
You know, the fire department is requiring that this question, the first requirement is supposed to show like a connection that would be on the engineering drawing.
Right, we'll comply with that.
He hasn't showed it yet, or has he? But the other one I see is a Knox box has to be shown on the plan, which has to be on the architectural drawing. So she has to show it on her drawing.
We can certainly add the Knox
Yeah,
box to the
we
architectural
will
drawing.
absolutely add,
Right.
we'll address these.
Comply with the fire department requirements.
we will absolutely comply with all three items, and
And
Mr.
I don't know if the sprinkler system is required. You are supposed to put a sprinkler system, whether
Yes,
it's
the building's
engineering
gonna be
drawings,
Fully
your
sprinkler,
drawings,
yes.
or
Yes.
whatever else, yeah. So you'll have to comply with all the requirements from the fire department.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So please continue.
Okay, thank you. The only other substantive change to the plans, I believe, is the relocation of the stair on the plan west side of the building, as Michael already mentioned. If you look at the first floor plan, you'll see that there's an exit from that stair that now faces towards Milltown Road.
Yes.
So when people exit the building, they can easily join the sidewalk along the front of the building and go out that way if they need to.
Understood.
Okay.
When you go to your design of the building, is that where you're headed down? Yes. Okay, go right ahead.
All right, so moving on to sheet A02, we have updated elevations indicating a new material palette based on the conversation that we had the last time. We've introduced a new set of materials that we feel are a lot more natural and in keeping with the setting of the park across the street and the existing Park Commission buildings. So in lieu of the brick that we were showing on the facade at the first story, we have now introduced a thin-set stone. The overhead doors, while we did investigate different door styles, I know that was a conversation we had the last time, we believe that keeping the style simple and matching the color of the stone as closely as possible is going to result in the doors standing down the most, because we don't want an architectural detail on the door to catch people's eye. So we've opted to go with the standard roll-down door style.
In practical terms, I mean, to my eye, it looks like it's disappearing into the stone. Is that
That's
in real life going to look the same way, in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
So instead of the stucco that was making up the field of the building for the upper floors, we're now introducing a wood look metal panel that has a horizontal plank look. So that's going to emphasize the horizontal lines of the building and make it look a little bit smaller. And it also speaks to the wood of the buildings across the street, to the mature trees and the woods behind the building. And the metal panel that's accenting the window feature is also, it was a vertical detail, and now we've changed that to a horizontal detail in a complementary kind of warm taupe color that's intended to look nice with that wood, but it's much warmer. We've eliminated the gray tones that were in the original design. You'll also see that at the entrance, we've added a low roof with a decorative column detail, and there's a natural stone base there on those columns, so it kind of brings it down to a more human scale, once again, kind of speaking to those Park Commission buildings across the street. We did introduce a rear elevation, that's the north side of the building, so you can see what that looks like here, and as Michael mentioned, we have an alternate for that as well, which we can pull up shortly. And I think that sums up the changes to the elevations. Sheet A3 shows some updated renderings, and the perspectives are slightly different here as well.
And just when we're going to go through the renderings, one of the representations made at the June 9th hearing is that we were going to bolster our landscaping plan that was submitted in the dimensional plan. Do your renderings reflect as an accurate representation of the landscaping we're proposing?
Yes. I was just about to say that. No, that's okay. These correlate with the updated landscape plans. We've done our best to accurately represent the types and sizes of plants here, so you'll get a feel for what that actual landscaping treatment will be. Oh, wait. I think you're on the right one. Yeah,
This one?
no, that's okay.
So we need to mark this, right? Because this wasn't submitted before.
Yeah, this is,
I believe this is part of the original submission.
I think, let's see. Now, this has the additional renderings. This one. So, Mr. Oler, I think we're at A5.
A5, correct.
And these are supplemental renderings consisting of 2 sheets. And they're dated, today, August 11th.
Dated the 10th.
August 10th, they're dated 2026.
So, yeah, that sheet, that's fine. Sheet A3, I believe, might have been updated slightly, but is more or less the same as what we were looking at before. We have an updated view of the entry, taken at the ground level to give you a sense of what the scale of the building is actually going to be. And the tree line behind the building, you can see that in spite of the height of the building, it does blend with that mature tree line behind.
Height of the building being compliant too.
Yes, and actually, I believe we were able to shave a foot off of the height, so we're at 39.2.
Can I go to the next? Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, that's fine. I mean, these are just different perspectives of the same material, so unless there are questions on this.
So in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, we're looking at what would be considered the main entrance.
That's correct, yes.
And we're looking here from sort of the east toward the west, is that fair to say? Or if I'm facing the building from the street, and it's kind of on my right side, and it's the corner?
Correct, yes. Yeah, so the right corner facing the building from the street is where
Gotcha.
the main entry point
Okay.
would be.
And just describe the others as you would go through them.
Yeah, so the next image to the right here is more of a zoomed out view, more or less standing at Milltown Road where the entry sign is, so you can get a sense of where that entrance is, that it's on the right side of the building. Another comment that we got the last time was that there was a feeling that that front facade was off balance. So we did introduce more architectural detail with the additional windows and the horizontal metal panel accent there to try to balance that out a little bit more. I think you can also get a good sense of the trees and plants that are planned for this area and how that enhances the building and does serve to further hide those roll-down doors.
And the this rendering doesn't reflect the street trees, but we'll see that in a rendering coming up.
Correct, yes. And then that lower image is just kind of from the opposite perspective, as if you were in the yard right by Milltown Road looking towards the existing building. So you can see the height difference between our proposed building and the existing building in the background.
Mr. Hart, the green box by the entrance, is that transformers?
I believe so, yes.
And the what I'm seeing, the reflection here, we're not proposing a pond or anything. That's supposed to be the stormwater detention basin.
That's correct. That's a dry basin. It would have water after a rain event, and it would gradually dissipate.
So renderings are after a rain event.
Correct. Which is pretty much every day right now. So. All right, so we can move on to the next one.
I have a question on the trees before you. You're obligated by virtue of the ordinance to have 81 total trees, if I understand this correctly, and you're proposing 28.
We've increased the number of replacement trees to 50% of what the ordinance requires.
50?
50%. Yes, and like I don't know if we can ultimately meet the number of replacement trees. Well, if we can't, we would obviously make, as required under your ordinance, a contribution in lieu. However many trees we can get in the site, and we'll work with your board professional to do that. We'll work up to that number. I don't know what that final number looks like, but we're committed to working with your planner and your engineer to get there.
And that includes the north side, the side against the railroad track?
That side, I don't think that we have room based upon the stabilized turf area. What you'll see in a moment is that there is a significant amount of mature vegetation. It is not on our property. It's in the railroad's property. That's a challenge. There's also wetlands on the property, so there are environmentally sensitive areas. We're not disturbing it, and we don't want to disturb it. So there are certain environmental constraints on the property that we're avoiding. So that's why I say however we can increase buffering trees, we want to. We'll work with your...
And the trees that you're planting will look like the trees that are here, or will look like the trees that are here years from now?
I'm very sorry. Say that again, that
In
question.
the picture, you
Yes.
have trees. Will those trees, when you plant them, look like that, or will it take a few years of growth in order for them to look like that?
I think we've done our best to indicate what it will actually look like. In terms of the larger trees, they may be a little bit smaller at the time of planting than what's indicated here. This is our best estimate based on the landscape plan.
And the applicant's willing to replace the trees if they die?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now we're turning to...
Yeah, so the following page shows some drone images that were taken several weeks ago. So this is current imagery, and we've inserted the building to scale within those images. So we have overhead vantage points coming from both directions of Milltown Road. So coming from the 202 side on the left and from the railroad underpass side on the right. And then the lower right image is the actual size and look of the building from the Vanderveer Road side. So as just referenced, you can see that there are substantial mature trees on the railroad side.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to have that on display while you're talking about it. Say that again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so in the lower right-hand image, this is a photo from the Vanderveer side, and you can see the railroad there, and those are actual trees in the foreground, and that is the building to scale behind them. So those are the trees that we estimate to be on the railroad side of the property line.
Michael, we don't have this, right?
You don't, and it's been marked, we can mark this, it's part of the A5, but...
Is that page 2? I thought.
Yes, it is. It's page 2 of A5.
Okay. What about the picture with the two buildings side by side? I thought that was page 2.
This is
Okay.
all on...
You have 3 pictures on page 2? Okay.
Yes.
I couldn't tell that. Okay.
Sorry about that. Did you talk about the image in the top right? I don't know if you want to...
I did, just to say that it was from the perspective of, coming from the railroad underpass side of Milltown Road. But looking at the lower right image, I also want to point out that, we opted to do the wood look facade on that railroad side because we feel like it blends with the existing trees the best, and from the perspective of the residents, that it's less likely that they'll actually notice the building if we introduce fewer architectural features on that facade. So we did do an alternate, like I mentioned, and we can show that, but it's our recommendation to keep it as simple as possible because we don't want it to be noticeable for the residents across the street, and I really don't think there are many locations where anyone's even really going to be able to see the building from the actual homes. Like, this is taken from the road itself. But if they can, I don't think having windows would necessarily be a good thing. In fact, it might just make you feel more exposed too, you know.
I'll get to the rear windows in one moment. I just wanted to point out, because there was concern earlier, just regarding whether this is warehousing or something like this. You have a loading area on your renderings in the top right corner, sheet 2 of A5.
Yes,
So if you recall from prior testimony, this site is not designed to accommodate large trucks. That's your understanding?
that is correct, and this is mostly a parking and turnaround area that's indicated there. And as previously discussed, the sidewalk runs the entire length of the building, so a vehicle can't pull right up to the overhead doors.
So no loading docks, loading bays. I'm more getting here just because there's members of the public here that weren't here at the last
Understood.
hearing. And the site was designed for vans, single unit trucks.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna mark another exhibit, right, to show what our north elevation.
Yes,
Okay, give me 1 second, let me make sure I have the right, okay,
that's correct.
All right.
Very good.
all right, so,
So when you look at that north elevation in the middle of the page, that's what it would look like if we did a similar treatment as to what we're doing on the front side of the building.
and we need to mark
We're going to
this.
mark this A6.
A6.
Right, is it one page?
One page, it's architectural elevations, and it's dated August 11th, 2026.
I have a question for you.
The 10th.
What is the building height? The height of this building that's going to, do you know?
In the images, you mean? Is that the height of the building?
Question I have is about the height of the building, the storage building, how tall?
How tall? It's 39 foot 2 from grade to the top of the roof.
So does that require, Kathy, in your report, you said it was previously approved, but does it require a variance for this new building or?
Sorry, they require, it's not supposed to say previously approved, it's supposed to be a variance required, sorry about that. They don't require it for the height in feet, they require it for the number of stories. So in the zone, 3 stories is permitted and 45 feet, whereas they're proposing 4 stories and about a little over 40 feet. So it's not the height in feet that they're seeking the variance from, it's the height in the number of stories. One of the stories is below grade, but it's nevertheless still a story.
It does require a variance from us?
For the number of stories, yes.
Okay.
We're seeking relief for 4 stories, where the ordinance only permits 3 stories. One of the stories is located underground, but the way the ordinance defines story, it includes a story that is like a basement that is underground. So we are compliant with height, and our revised architecturals did reduce the height by approximately a foot.
A foot, yes.
We have just under 6 feet. We're below what the ordinance permits from a building height in a feet measurement.
So the elevation that faces the railroad tracks, could you just focus on that for a minute and show us what that looks like?
Absolutely.
That's detail 5, proposed north elevation.
Where my cursor is, I'm trying to,
Mr. Hart, if you eliminated the windows, I mean, I'd probably still recommend keeping the panels because it breaks the building up.
I agree. I think that would be a nice compromise there. It gives it some interest, but it doesn't make people feel like they're on display.
No, and I agree with you. So you've got windows facing the second story of your house.
Nobody
and
wants that.
Even
yeah.
though they're faux, they don't know that.
Exactly.
So it's like,
just for the record, I'm going back to the resubmission package that the board has a copy of, just so the board can reorient themselves with the north elevation without.
right, and that appears more of a warehouse than.
Right, and we can break it
Right,
up.
yeah.
Yep.
And the corner treatment remains the same. We're just introducing 2 more horizontal metal panel accents.
So if you go back to the other
Absolutely.
revised.
Wait, before you go back, sorry. That's okay. Just, I'm going to harp on my question again, which is the surface that is going to be on the north elevation of this building. Do they make something that looks exactly like that you can spray with a hose with the graffiti?
We would have to look into that specific question, but these are metal panel products that we're recommending, so they should be easily cleanable.
I'm sorry, I just happened to think it's a black canvas, about a blank canvas. So, thank you.
And that's why, like, if it's broken up, it doesn't give that,
Go blank.
you got that big blank wall to
Going
tag, let's say,
A6.
as Ms. Rose had brought out. So, I mean, I like the elevation as is, just eliminating the windows.
If the board, whatever the board's preference, we're happy to.
I think we'll defer to our planner and our engineers if they want to weigh in on that, but I'm not certain, so do you have an opinion about the windows, no windows look for that elevation that faces the railroad tracks?
What I was curious, actually, because before I answer that, I didn't know if they had provided another realistic rendering with the trees, because I think we heard testimony that, the way that it was shown actually blends in with the trees, and I'd like to see that. I don't know if that was provided or they prepared that. Be able to make that determination if it would stand out amongst the trees. Foliage on the trees, would it stand out more, what it would look like, or would it blend in?
So the image they have up on the screen currently shows the trees obscuring the building from Vanderveer's side. And the picture or the building itself is just a blank canvas there?
That's correct. So there's the taupe metal
no
panel
panels and
accent
so
at
on.
the corners, which honestly, you can't even really see that behind the tree in this image. You can see the mass of the building, and that's about it.
Right. So with respect to dressing up that side of the building, so it's not just one blank wall, you would introduce that panelized approach. And now we're kind of, Mr. Franco saying no windows. I'm saying I don't know, and looking for another opinion.
It's hard to tell because this is provided with foliage on the trees, and I think obviously the most impactful that the building's going to be is when there is foliage.
Right.
Buffer there with foliage. So it's hard for me to weigh in really without,
Okay.
the other 6 months out of the year.
Sure. Mr. Franco, what's your objection to the window, so I understand?
No, I kind of agreed with Mr. Hart that, that it's a two-way street. You're trying to create something that looks like an office building in an acceptable commercial area. Also, if I'm living on my second story where my bedrooms are, and I'm looking out of a window, that's, directly even with my house. It's one way or the other. But
I see what you're saying. So it's even though it's a faux window.
it's more of a privacy issue than, but, it's just like one of the other projects we've looked at that we talked about putting faux windows.
Mhm.
And I believe you're actually using glass.
It would be spandrel
Where
glass, so yeah,
one
it
of
would
the other
appear like
projects
glass
is
from the
literally
outside.
using a faux window, so it's like a black.
It doesn't open into the inside of the building.
Correct, but the residents wouldn't necessarily know that.
It's a spandrel glass that has
Right.
it's not transparent.
Right.
And it's not going to emit any light, right? It'll always be dark.
Right, it would be, in that case, it would be dark.
So,
Yeah.
well, if it did show into the interior and would be lit, I think then it would create a nuisance, right? It'd be probably
Yeah.
fake. It's not going to have any light.
It's one of those things, it's one way or the other. It's like, but it won't show any light.
Right.
Yeah, from preference standpoint, I think treating the building around all 4 sides, I'm always in favor of that, right? So that not one side is left behind.
Yes.
Or is unattractive to one side, it seems forgotten. So my opinion would be, especially if they don't have any kind of nuisance to the neighbors, no light, no additional noise, not opening or closing.
Okay.
It creates the whole, the whole design of the building.
Right. It keeps it more uniform in its design.
Can I throw in my opinion?
Why not?
I would think, the compromise would be to do panels on that backside without the faux windows at all. That way, nobody's concerned or looking in the window. My problem is just one that, these storage buildings, they look like warehouses. I was driving around today, I went to play golf, not in this town, and I'm seeing warehouses. They all look, and ones that were built 40 years ago and the ones that are there today. I was down in Delaware this summer, past the storage facility. It looked like a old factory with new glass windows in it, brick front. Didn't look like a warehouse. My problem is that they all look like warehouses.
Noted, and perhaps you can speak to, Ms. Hart, a little bit of the challenge in this site, because you're also trying to be, correct me if I'm mistaken, you're trying to be cognizant of the other building that's on the property.
It's true, and also the surrounding area. If you had, say, like a turn-of-the-century brick factory-looking building here, it would be an attractive building, but I would argue that it might seem completely out of place given the setting that you're in. And we really want to take the approach of having this building look attractive when you do notice it, but stand down and not catch the eye. We don't want people to drive down the road and say, whoa, so that's what we're trying to achieve by introducing these more natural looking materials. And the wood look panel is actually quite convincing. I mean, unless you walk up and touch it, it's really hard to tell that it's not actually wood.
And there were pictures of the existing building that's remaining that I presented at the first hearing, and they were marked as exhibits, and I can pull them up. I would need to disconnect and get that up.
And that's
That
a
would be helpful.
particularly unattractive building.
We're
Beauty is on
trying.
the eye of the beholder. It was just renovated, and I think that where it came from previously and where it is now, again, it's a subjective opinion. It's a vast improvement than in comparison to what it was years ago. But
We're trying to complement it without looking like it. That's not our goal.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart, do you have additional comments you'd like to share with us?
I don't think so. Do you have any other questions for me?
I don't have.
I'll just ask the board if they have any questions based on your testimony so far. If not, I'm going to defer to our board professionals. Ms. Sarmed, do you want to go first, or?
I just have a couple of questions. and
Please.
Comments. So overall, I appreciate the work that was done by the applicant. I think that they obviously addressed a lot of what was brought up in the review letter, so I do appreciate, the time taken to do that and to carefully go through that, and then the other consideration of the other options for the board to consider. Just a few questions. The massing diagram that's up on the screen right now, is the existing building, the adjacent building on the site, is it about the same height as the proposed structure?
The existing building is 12 foot shorter, and I think it does look like they're approximately the same size, and I think that's the forced perspective of the aerial view.
It doesn't do it justice that there's a difference. In
I think in the image on the top right, you can see the height difference a little bit more. Well, and actually the lower right too, that's true.
that does provide a little bit better, thank you.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, you'd mentioned that the building height was 39.2 feet. The engineering plans in the bulk table, which were updated for other things like FAR and coverage based on the reduction in the building off of the property line, but the height was not adjusted. Do you know if the building height did change or based on the grade or anything like that, or if it's just an error on the engineering plan that it wasn't updated?
I think likely it just hasn't been updated because that was something that we changed with this latest submission.
Okay.
And it's 39.2 inches, just to clarify.
Okay. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman. for this witness.
Mr. Wisniewski,
Yes.
as my father would say.
We say it as well. Yeah, thank you. No, just to add to what Ms. Sarnad had referenced, I think we appreciate the alternate renderings of the backside of the building. I know that that's what Mr. Burr had pointed out, looking at that and seeing that would sort of enhance the appearance of the building, and I think I concur with the discussion about having a similar facade around the sides of the building, the longer faces of the building. But other than that, I really, don't have anything further to add. I think it's improved from the prior rendering, certainly, that I had reviewed that Mr. Burr had provided to me, from the more gray massing structure to a more naturalized appearance. But otherwise, I don't have any other additional comments to make.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open up the floor to the members of the public who would who would like to ask questions of Ms. DeHart regarding her architectural testimony only.
Can you send my name?
Yes. Well, you already signed in, right? So just remind us of your name and your address.
My name is James Meister. I'm at 262 Baldywood Drive in Branchburg, New Jersey.
James, can you spell your last name, please?
Meister. Good to go? All right.
Just in terms of Mr. Meister, and I heard you during public comment, in terms of your position that you're an interested party in this matter, can you just explain your interest in this matter?
Sure. Is it okay if I turn this way?
Yeah, as long as you don't disconnect anything, you should be okay.
You could just turn your body without putting this.
So I'm interested party because of traffic concerns. I know the traffic individual is not here right now, which I understand, but I still have questions regarding architecture that can impact traffic. I'm in the neighboring town over. I'm about, if there wasn't, I had to go around the river, I'm about, 5 to 10 minute way away from here. And River Road is where I'm by, which is right across the river. And so the architecture of this building really impacts where I'm actually really concerned about the environmental concerns of this. And I know this is on a floodplain. I know the area nearby that is Old Town Park, the North Branch Park often gets flooded very easily and very often, and especially after recent.
Excuse me, you're sort of testifying. What we're trying to figure out is you're from Branchburg and would like to accommodate you, what your interest is.
In other words, are you an interested party in this application? Do you have standing?
Could you expand on what you mean by standing?
So, the municipal land use law is actually pretty liberal in its definition of interested party. And I think what you've said so far is that you're familiar with the property, you go by it all the time, you see it, the park across the street.
Yeah.
So it impacts you and your daily life, right? You're okay? Yep, okay, I agree.
So ask your questions, but the questions are specific to Ms. DeHart's testimony regarding the architecture of this building.
Sounds good to me. So just to clarify, I have standing, I'm in the clear?
You're good.
You're in the clear.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I understand with, I know there's the moat. I don't know the exact technical definition of the moat that's in front of the building there. Could you
Okay, so
clarify?
it's not a moat, right? It's a detention basin.
Gotcha.
Not even a retention basin. They just happen to take this faux picture after a rainstorm, as he mentioned, right? It's just a
Water in
simulated.
front of the building.
Gotcha.
It's not encroaching on any environmentally sensitive areas. There are environmentally sensitive areas on the site, but
I noticed you noted there are some environmentally sensitive areas on the site. Could you expand on that?
yeah, our engineer testified to this at the first hearing. There are wetlands on the property that we are not encroaching upon. I believe the only encroachment that we might have to make, which we would need to get a DP permit for, would be our sewer connection. You're talking about an extremely minimal encroachment since we can't connect to the existing building under the township's code. I don't want to get, first of all, I didn't testify to it. Second of all, I don't want to delve into testimony that wasn't in front of the board this evening, particularly because our
But there's a designated wetland shown on the site plan.
Sorry, could you repeat that last part?
There's a designated wetland shown on the site plan.
Gotcha. Thank you. So those are the potential encroachments on those environmentally sensitive areas that you described.
No, what he's saying is there are environmentally sensitive areas, and the only potential encroachment would be with respect to the sewer connection. Other than that, the design and the engineering has been to respect the environmentally sensitive areas and avoid them.
Gotcha. So I understand that the intention is to respect and avoid those environmentally sensitive areas, but I still contain this fear that even though there's that respect and intent, there is that violation of those environmentally sensitive areas. For me personally, I would like to see, and this
We're
is
still trying to get to a question because your job here right now is to question, not to testify.
Yes.
At the end of the application, members of the public will have an opportunity to testify.
Thank you, yes. So my question on that note is if the architect would be open to allowing permeable pavement, permeable parking lots that will allow the water instead of seeping into the basin and flooding our sensitive.
Really not an appropriate question for the architect. We had engineering testimony earlier, so
And we're open to complying with the stormwater management regulations for a major development in accordance with DEP. I'll just touch on it because I did represent it in my introduction. Our lot coverage is approximately 36%. That's what we're proposing. Or the zone allows up to 60%. So in satisfying the DEP regs and also being just over half of what's permitted on the property, I think that we're totally within what's permitted, under state law, local law, with respect to stormwater management. I think those regulations are in place to address your concerns. And I don't mean to be rude. Our architect just testified, and your commentary and questions are I want to hear questions related to architecture, and then we can address your more engineering-related comments.
Got you. So in other words, the questions I was asking were more engineering related, and I want to more focus on the architectural. I thought my questions were architectural related, but I'll try to shift more specifically to the architecture of the building, and that can shift over to to my knowledge, the 690 units of the storage facility. Is that correct? 690.
It was 630.
630. And is that, how much of a percent increase is that from the original plan?
The floor area is the same. The number of units has roughly doubled, I think, from where it was the last time.
And that was at the request of the board that we be given a maximum number of storage units that would be contained in that building. And that's so that we can say that no more than 630 units will be built in that building, in that square footage.
Gotcha. And I know my concern about that is related to traffic issues. I don't want to segue into traffic, so I'll skip that part.
Also,
But
just, if you have a concern, save it for comments, because you'll get the chance to say all of your concerns, promise.
yeah. Gotcha. Thank you. And I want to ask as well about, and this is another architectural related question, in the evening time, is there evening lights that will be going up around the building to illuminate the building, as well as security cameras around the building? Is that an engineering question or architectural question?
Both.
Okay.
And actually, I did forget to mention that we're showing wall sconces now on the exterior of the building, so that is a change from the last submission. We're indicating, oops, it just disappeared again. Simple metal sconces there at the first floor level. Those are dimmable lights. And I don't remember the exact hours of operation, but the intention would be just to have minimal lighting for security purposes at that point.
Mr. Hart, there's no wall packs on it, is there? Just the sconces?
Correct. Yeah, we're not looking at any bright floodlights.
There's
or
no
anything
lighting
like
on the north side, the railroad side?
I don't know that we've gotten to that level of detail yet, only if it was required for security, but we're certainly respectful of light pollution and are not trying to
And I know
light this
previous
thing up.
applications, we've asked for lighting to be on sensors and
Okay.
things like that, so most of the time it's dark.
We're open to whatever lighting requirements that you're looking for.
And your question about 24/7 surveillance, the answer is yes.
There will be 24/7 for surveillance. May I ask, how tall will the cameras will be? Is it on a pole, or is it on the side of the building, the actual physical building, or is it on the sides of the parking lots in the corners?
I don't think that there's been that level of design carried out with respect to the security features on the site. And, typically, we don't like to put on public record exactly the extent of the security measures we're taking in case someone was listening to the hearing. And but these operators want to certainly maintain that their site is secure, and as a condition of approval, 24/7 surveillance cameras is something that I think we've already committed to doing that.
So my follow-up question to that is regarding surveillance cameras. And this is a question in the form of a question, but more often than not, we're seeing more cameras being put up around our community, whether it's flock AI cameras or other forms of private surveillance. It's a major concern for a lot of our neighbors. And I'm curious if, even though you may not have the specific details of the placement, the location, the dimensions of those cameras, it's really important that before our board here approves something like that, that they are aware of the height and the dimension of those cameras, especially because it's
I just think
across
that
from
what you'll
residential.
find is that with respect to the very specific details about cameras and security, usually those things are addressed when we get to a more specific plan, and the applicant will agree in advance to comply with all existing ordinances, all existing building codes, everything that is already built in to protect some of those concerns that you may have, but also to put it in the perspective that we're not disclosing it right now in the hearing, but it will be disclosed when the final plans are made.
And
So they can't answer your question now.
I understand that. I appreciate in the interest of time. But in the interest of time, I think the less interruptions and the less back and forth between our different individuals here, we can wrap up this question and answer.
Only if you ask a question.
Yeah, then these are my questions are about these cameras. And I want to better understand that although you can give the specifics yet, it's really important, especially because, as I was saying, it's across from residential housing. The railroad tracks are right across from us over there in the neighborhood. And we want to make sure that as residents are walking around in their yards and in their driveway.
There's going to be a question mark at the end.
Yeah, oh, yeah, there definitely is. And I want to make sure as residents are walking around in their driveway and in their sidewalks that they aren't being surveilled by private influences. So my question for you is, and I'll ask a final time, when will you be able to reveal to us what the specific camera dimensions will be?
We won't reveal that. It'll be a matter of post-approval compliance. If this is approved, we wouldn't want to publicly reveal our surveillance arrangement. Our goal is not to surveil the community. It's to ensure that the property is safe. There would be no incentive to try to surveil the surrounding properties, just to secure the property. So,
Gotcha. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you.
I'll leave it
Anyone
like
else? Thank you.
No, put it back, please.
Yeah, please. Yes.
Sorry about that. Just to repeat, there are lighting, wall-mounted lighting fixtures proposed along the parking area sides of the building, the southern and western faces of the facades of the building. But on the railroad side, the eastern facade and the northern limit, there are no building-mounted fixtures proposed on the engineering plans.
Thank you. Please, tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Wendy Pinchinson.
You might want to, yeah, that's good.
I live at 408 Brokaw Court, and I just had a couple of questions. Could you?
Would you just spell your last name, please?
Oh, sure. Pinchinson, Pinchinson.
Thank you.
And I live in Vanderhaven Farms, which is at the backside of the proposed building. Could you talk about any entrances or doors, parking spaces that would be located on the, I guess, the train side of the building, for lack of?
There actually are none now. We did have an emergency egress on that side before, but we've moved it, so there are no doors, there's no parking. It's a blank facade. There really shouldn't be anyone on that side of the building.
Okay. And is there any details on landscaping? I know, I literally will drive down my street and see the backside of this building. It will be something I will see every day from Vanderveer and also Brokaw Court. Brokaw Court is the first street going into the development. Is there a proposal for trees that will remain green throughout the year? I know that the trees there that are current, as soon as the fall comes in winter, I can see clear all the way through to the current building that is on that site. So I want to just understand what may be planned to, again, continue to not impact the community with this additional building there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from March 24th, our engineer testified to the fact that there's a stabilized turf area that is requested. It's not, it's not like a paved area or anything, but it's an area that would have to remain open in the event of an emergency so that a fire apparatus could navigate to the rear of the building. So we're limited with the type of vegetation that we can install in that area because we have to keep it open for emergency service vehicles. So I think that was what our engineer testified.
Okay.
So the trees that are shown in the image are on the railroad side of the
Yeah,
property,
I'm
yeah.
super familiar with it. And I know
They're
that
just
tree,
not
and I
on
know
our
that tree.
property, so, yeah.
From that all the way across, Vanderveer residents, as well as my street, Brokaw Court, will only see the complete backside of it. We right now have natural light. It's very serene. It's really actually a really nice view down the street. So it's just it's something that I'm hoping does not move forward. It's going to negatively, I feel.
Well, now we're just asking you to ask questions
Yeah.
about the
And
architectural
I'm sorry.
testimony, so you'll have
you.
an opportunity to have your comments
Sure.
at the end.
Thank you. But, and I know he asked about the lights, so that was the other question I had. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks very much. Any other members of the public asking questions specific to the architectural testimony?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I ask just a
No, please.
I think Mr. Silbert just characterized that they are limited in the landscaping they can do in the rear of the building. And I
Yes.
just clarify, because that fire access road goes from building to property line. So it's
Yes.
they're limited. There's no landscaping proposed in that area.
Correct.
I just want to
Okay.
clarify that for the resident. That
Yeah, that's stabilized areas for emergency access for fire vehicles and the like.
Correct.
Any other questions architecturally speaking for our witness?
You want me to sign in again?
Yes. Well, you don't have to sign in again. Just remind us who you are and where you live.
Carolyn Joya, 1402 Paley Court, also immediately adjacent to this particular location. The first question I have for the architect, I understand you gave your qualifications and everything. I'm just wondering, are you also representing Mr. Natale in the two other storage facilities he's doing in Somerville and the one in Hillsborough?
It's okay.
Can I ask that question?
Yes, USA Architects is representing him.
So you're representing him for 4 storage facilities?
3. There's 2 in
This one,
Somerville in
2 in
this
Somerville and
application.
Hillsborough.
We're not,
You're not doing Hillsborough on
not
206?
Hillsborough, no.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate the transparency. Okay. My main question, and I did listen to the previous hearing, and I did listen to Mr. Natale, who's in the back. Hello. Appreciate his attendance and interest. He had made the statement that the size of the units, there was demand research or something that suggested they wanted not 10 by 30s, but 10 by 10s. And then,
We're trying to ask questions of
Burr.
her testimony, not Mr. Natale's testimony.
no, I know, this is
so-
foundation.
So what I'd like to do is direct your questions on the architectural testimony.
Okay. Mr. Burr had asked if you were to make the units smaller, could you reduce the FAR? And I think Ms. Rose was also concerned about the FAR. So you went to 5 by 5s, although other testimony was that the market is demanding 10 by 10s, not 5 by 5s. So I'm wondering, what other information did you put into your calculus on that one?
I think that and I'll let Mr. Hart answer, but I think you're conflating the number of units or unit sizes with the overall floor area of the building. So whether there's more 10 by 10s, more 5 by 5s, more 10 by 30s, if the unit count is 630, 400, 230, that's not impacting the floor area ratio calculation. The floor area ratio calculation is independent on the number of units we're proposing. There is certainly some relationship in the sense that a bigger building, you could have more units, but you also might not. If you had a bigger building, but you had all 10 by 30s, you would have less units. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I see that you're speaking to the floor area ratio. I just think that your question is with respect to the size of the units, which is not dictating the size of the building.
And I'll remind you that the board had asked for a maximum number of units, and that's what they came back to us with.
Yes, I think before they were at 227 to 305, and they were giving this range, and you didn't like that. Now they came up with 630, which is
As the
double.
worst-case scenario.
Worst case scenario, right. So, but my point is, you were asked to adjust the number of units to reduce the FAR. You adjusted the
No.
the units, and you didn't reduce the FAR.
You're-
And we actually
also-
did reduce the FAR.
I think Michael answered your question earlier.
But ma'am, we increased the number of units, but we reduced the size of the building. That's what I was trying to explain in my prior response to you, is that the floor area ratio is not a reflection upon the unit count.
Right, you went from 3.8 to 3.6, so you went,
We went from 36.8% to, I believe, 36.5%.
okay, I said 6, but, yeah.
I'm just,
It's like less than, it's not a lot. Okay, and that came mostly from the new fire lane, the reduction, the foot of the fire reduction.
Correct.
Entirely, and then maybe a little bit off the roof. You said about a foot. What, a foot?
Well, that's not impacting the square footage, though. Just, it would impact the volume of the building, but not the
Okay.
footprint.
So, yeah, you're still at about the FAR of the Chimney Rock facility right now, right?
We really can't compare the two. Each case sits independent of the other.
I would think that would be a good thing since that was approved.
the answer is not even remotely close. Not even in the ballpark.
Okay, I had looked it up online, it said it was 36.6. Okay, moving on.
I think I have a copy of the resolution, which I'd be happy to.
Okay, Ms. Shepherd, you had said that you were, is that your name?
Mr. Hart.
The Hart. Sorry, I got the planner on my mind. You had said that you were consulting with management companies, correct, and operators and things like that.
The team did.
The team
The
did.
owner did, yeah, so
Okay.
that's data that I may not have access to or committed to memory.
Your testimony was that you took into consideration what operators were saying.
My testimony was that the team
Right,
met with the, yes.
I thought she was testifying for herself. I'm sorry. Okay. Did you speak with a company called Prime Group Holdings, or did anyone from the team speak to a company?
We're trying to limit the questions to the architecture of the building, and I don't see how it's relevant. So
Well, she
ask
said
a different question.
that she's on a team that spoke to operators, and I'm asking if one of the operators was Prime Group Holdings.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know,
You don't recall?
do not know.
The principal, I'm sure, has spoken to operators. Both of us have not spoken to operators.
Oh, I thought maybe because they're one of the biggest. They have 340 storage facilities, including one up the road from.
We're still trying to get to the architectural questions. I'm not sure what
I wanted to know if she spoke with Prime. She's saying no.
and move on.
Okay. Okay, I want to get to the important ones.
It's usually best to start with the important ones and then work your way down.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that you're trying to make the building blend in with the massive county park that's across the street. I appreciate the color selections. Do you really think this is going to hide the building at 4 feet tall?
The material selections are intended to complement the buildings at the park. It's not going to hide the building. The idea is that it will blend more with the existing tree line. That was what I spoke to. So the natural materials will blend with the existing more mature trees more than the gray palette that we had previously shown. And the materials were also selected to complement the Park Commission buildings, but in no way would it blend.
Okay. I was looking at your rendering of the, I don't think it's up now, but the train, when you see the train track? Okay, I live there, and that train is much higher. And I'm just wondering where you got your specifications from regarding the height of where that train track in your renderings comes from?
That is a literal photograph that we took standing there. So it's actually not that high. I mean, what you're looking at there is us visiting the site and taking that photography.
So the building behind it isn't real, but the.
Correct,
You're
but
saying
the
that you
train track is real.
superimposed
Correct, that's an
real
actual
life.
photo with the building superimposed.
All right, it was my impression, it was, the train track was much higher, so I just wasn't
And
sure. I live
honestly,
there,
I was
so.
surprised to see that it wasn't as well based on the discussion that I'd heard previously. It's not elevated that high off of the road, at least not in that location.
Yeah, because that train zooms past, you know.
And I didn't actually see the train itself.
didn't?
So I'm just looking at the static condition of the railroad here.
Okay. Yeah, we hear it all the time where we live, which, you know, by the way, it's already a loud area, so, you know. Were you aware that there's federally protected wildlife in that area, the bald eagle? Were you aware of that when you,
As an architect, I don't think it's
Not the right,
appropriate.
right witness.
right?
Yeah, it's not an appropriate question for her. She didn't testify about anything like that.
All right, will anybody be speaking, do they have any other witnesses planned to speak on environmental issues?
No, we don't, but what I can say is that we have to obtain and have obtained DEP approval. They're obviously looking to ensure that we're not disturbing wildlife as part of their LOI. I believe there's an active LOI on the property that was already testified to.
What does LOI stand for?
Letter of interpretation.
Okay.
So, but the point, and again, I'm not an engineer, but the point in saying that is that this state, as part of the review of this application, we can't construct this without the Department of Environmental Protection approving this project to go forward.
And you haven't gotten that approval yet?
We have a letter of interpretation.
Oh, that's the LOI you were talking about.
So there was a back and forth between, I believe his name is Mr. Meister, was asking questions about environmentally sensitive areas. So our submittals have to respect those environmentally sensitive areas. And that's as far as I can really go on that comment.
Okay, I appreciate that color. Comments were made about the architect. You planned for large trucks, I think. What do you constitute a large truck?
No large trucks.
Not,
The comment was that we're not planning for large trucks or any sort of physical loading dock. There's just a small parking and turnaround area in the parking lot to allow people, essentially to turn around and leave the premises.
So you said vans and single unit trucks.
That's my understanding, yes, like a box truck.
What, a box truck, that's a large truck. That's a large truck.
Again, if you have
I guess that's
I only asked
subjective
because
to
of that
some extent.
little underpass we have going on there, like, and then rush hour traffic and stuff, and you must have included all that into your calculations in terms of the entrance point being where it is and the egress being where it is.
You're starting to testify. The question, you want to ask a question, it might be, did you consider the height of the underpass when you were designing that? But what I would tell you is if the truck can't go through the underpass, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Right. If he can't get through, it's not going to get through.
So
So it's designed for small trucks and cars.
it
That
was
was her
designed for box
testimony.
trucks and U-Hauls, I was just told.
Yeah, but from an engineering standpoint, traffic standpoint, all of those questions were that the board actually asked these questions at the very first hearing when our traffic expert testified, and I can certainly appreciate your concern as a resident of Bridgewater wanting to reopen it, but this witness can't answer that because she wasn't tasked with designing the project with that in mind.
Really helpful. He just said they'd bring back a traffic expert.
No, I didn't say we.
No, he said he already
We
testified.
already presented the traffic expert.
I thought you said you'd be willing to revisit, because there are some questions about that.
Well, the questions would have been asked at the time.
So I mean, there's, the YouTube recording is up. Those questions were asked by the board members.
So you know, we had a traffic engineer come here before. So if you were not there, you missed the question.
These are my notes. I was there.
No, you should have asked these questions, the traffic engineer, when.
Yeah, but they changed the size of the units, so now we have twice as many cars, and I didn't know they were going to do
There's
that.
been no testimony indicating that you have twice as many cars.
Well, twice as many units, right?
The testimony is that the number of, it's the square footage of the building that dictates the traffic, not the number of units.
You might disagree, and you should definitely say that you disagree in public comment, but we don't have any testimony that speaks to the number of units dictating traffic counts. There's no, and you can put that testimony on. Just not now.
I can also bring a traffic engineer as well. Okay, let me think if I have anything else. I'm appreciating everyone's time. The building that's currently on the property, the Avnos building, you know, where they're doing that big lab and battery storage or whatever, I don't know, carbon capture. What happens to their parking lot there? Did you make accommodations? Because they have people working there, and in your renderings, I didn't see their parking lot. What happens
Not
to
part of
that?
the architectural
This is
testimony.
not an architectural question, it's an engineering question.
No, I mean, the parking lot,
She's not an engineer, she's an architect. The
she
engineer
designed the parking
designs-
lot for the
designed
storage
parking lot.
facility.
She
You
did-
are asking the wrong
Storage
person.
facility.
Oh, that's not part of, who does, that? Oh, that was the
Civil
engineer who did that?
designed it.
Yeah.
And the renderings reflect what parking, you know, relative to what exists with the Avnos site today. I mean, look, we've already.
Avnos is the white building? Was that the white building?
It is.
Do you have any architectural questions for this witness's testimony?
Right.
I think I've done that. I think I've answered or asked everything. I was at the last council meeting, and there was some discussion about some new zoning ordinances that you might all also need to.
Well, now you're offering
Incorporate.
testimony. This is only to ask questions about the architect. So
Yeah, because we're not
we will
voting
thank you
tonight,
for your
correct?
comments and ask you to
Wouldn't be applicable.
return to your seat.
Even if the ordinances were enacted, it's not applicable because the application is grandfathered in under the old ordinance, so it's not within this board's purview. Those ordinances, as it relates to any pending application.
Okay. All right, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell us who you are, please, and where you live.
I'm Lu Zhen and live at 1706 Bailey Court. Lu Zhen, last name is Z-E-N-G, Zhen. I'm also live in 1706 Bailey Court, which is very close to the train station, yeah, and the Vanderbilt. Yeah, my question is strictly related to the architecture of the building. How close is the warehouse to the train station, to the train track? How close? Do we know?
I'm not proposing a warehouse, and it's, the setback is 24 feet from the property line. So, and then the railroad, I'd have to go back and check the transcript to see how long the railroad, how far away the railroad line is from
The answer is that it's not an architectural question. She didn't testify to it. Do you have another question for her?
Yes, another question is how the building was designed architecture-wise to be safety, like fire hazard, because normally I think a warehouse should not be built so close to a rail track, because the shake of the train, that could affecting the building safety and also fire hazard. That's my question, yeah.
Well, once again, it's not a warehouse, but this is proposed to be code compliant and is within the acceptable setbacks for the property. So that's all I know about the closeness
And what
to the
kind,
railroad
okay,
track.
the last question is, what kind of material are we gonna really store in the warehouse? Will there be any chemicals or a fire hazard?
It's not an architectural question, and it had been asked and posed those questions earlier, so.
We already agreed to condition limiting what would be stored in the building, non-hazardous materials.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much. That's
Thank
my
you.
Question.
My name down? Let me record my
For the
name.
record, we need your name.
Atul Kumar Darji,
Okay, I'm going to ask you to spell it, please.
Atulkumar, Darji, Darji. 5 Charlotte Drive. May I ask my questions?
Please.
This property sits, well, before I actually do, I really appreciate you guys staying and listening to all this. I know you guys probably don't get the thanks that you deserve. I know you all don't get paid to do this, so thank the board. Really appreciate you giving us the time and opportunity. My question is, this property sits directly across from Somerset County Park, correct?
Yes.
Does your proposed exterior facade feature, it's really a prominent multi-story building. Is it going to be visible from Milltown Road, or is it going to be obscured?
It will be visible from Milltown Road as we indicated in the updated renderings. Those are what we believe to be an accurate portrayal of the proportions of the building and what you will see from Milltown Road.
But would you say substantially buffered?
Yes, absolutely, but it will be visible.
So people using the park across the street right now, they see a tree line, now they'll see the building.
Depending on where you are in the park, potentially.
Besides changing the door color of the doors, the roll of doors, or adding perimeter land buffering, have you made any structural or architectural modifications to alter the industrial visual impact? Because it does, like I think one of the board members said earlier, it really looks like a warehouse. I know it's not a warehouse.
Sorry, what's the question?
Have you made any changes to that visually impact this 4-story bulk storage facility facing the county park? Besides the color, have you made any of the changes to make it not make it look like an industrial warehouse?
It's a great question, and it's already been testified to throughout the entire evening.
The other thing I'll just point out quickly is we had received earlier renderings that we deemed to be too industrial in its appearance, and we asked them to go back and adhere to different standards. So it's been substantially changed in its appearance. And you also have to understand that there's a balance that they're trying to achieve here between the existing building and the new one. So to answer your question, yes, they changed it, and it's meant to be more fitting to the site.
Are you requesting waivers or relief regarding buffer yards, landscaping, or parking setback requirements?
Not relevant to our architect's testimony. But we'll get there very shortly with our planner.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional public questions, let's close that portion of the meeting. We only ask for one person at a time anyway. You've already spoken. Thank you.
Already had.
I'm sorry?
Objection to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we've closed the public session for cross-examination of this witness.
And we're going to take a 10-minute break starting now. Yes, I'm here.
Deli,
Here.
Mrs. Amin,
Here,
Mr. Franco,
Here?
Ms. Rose, Ms. Wiseman, and Mr. Mignella. And our board professionals are here as well.
Very well. Mr. Silbert,
Chairman.
we are done with your architectural testimony, and you would like to introduce us to?
I would like to introduce the board, board professionals and the public to our professional planner, Ms. Kristen Shepard. If I may.
Please.
Hi. Ms. Shepherd, would you remain standing? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. Just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, it's Kristen Shepard, Cristen. Last name is Shepard, Sheppard.
Thank you.
And I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. My license is active and in good standing, and I've been before dozens of boards across the state.
You were just accepted as an expert in planning by the Township's Planning Board?
I was, yes, last week.
Very well. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Shepard, you've been here since the first hearing, is that?
I'm sorry. I just want to say formally, we accept your credentials and accept you as an expert. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you've been attending these hearings in person since the very first hearing back in March?
Yes.
And you've paid attention to the testimony, are familiar with the application, have reviewed the application materials?
Yes, correct.
Can you please, for the benefit of the board and the public, go through the relief that we're seeking?
Yes, of course. Good evening again, everybody. So tonight, with this application, we're looking at a D1 use variance, as storage facilities are not permitted in this zone. We're also looking at a D1 variance for multiple principal structures on one site, which was noted by the board planner. We're also requesting a D4 FAR area, so floor area ratio variance. I will refer to it as FAR. And then 2 bulk variances. One is for the number of stories that is permitted in the zone. We're requesting 4, where 3 is required. And there is now an additional variance for a driveway setback that was triggered by the additional foot that was added on to the fire access lane in the back. And also, there are about 6 design waivers that were addressed by the board engineer.
Great. So say that again about the fire access way, about the variance we're seeking for that, just so we're clear on that.
Sure. So section 126-181D states that no part of any driveway or parking lot shall be located within 10 feet of a side or rear property line. And now with that additional foot, we are butting into that.
So what you're saying is by virtue of the 24-foot wide fire access lane, if that's considered a driveway, that's within 10 feet of the setback.
That's how it's being treated, correct?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a number of proofs to put on the record, so I'll just dive right into it. So I just want to start off by saying that the bulk relief tonight, I believe under the Price versus Himij, can be subsumed as it is ancillary to the D1. However, I will put some additional negative criteria points on the record regarding the bulk variances. And then respectfully regarding the D1 variance for the multiple principal structures, in that first meeting, Mr. Silbert had gotten into detail about the section 126-330, which was really open to interpretation for how we would perceive there to be openness when looking at an opportunity to include an additional use. However, I realize that there has been recent ordinance changes to make that language more clear when it comes to not allowing additional uses in a non-residential zone. And obviously at time of application, we're looking at the previous ordinance. I will also just...
Not yet effective yet.
Not yet effective yet. And of course, at time of... Not yet effective or adopted, it's in draft form. But regardless, and in abundance of caution, I'm going to put D1 variance relief on the record as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I will start my justifications for the particular site suitability for both the D variances. So under Medici, it asks the board to determine that there is a particular, or for us to help the board to see that there's particular site suitability when it comes to this proposed use, and in this case with the additional use on the site. So I do find this to be particularly suited as a site for the proposed self-storage facility, as well as the additional use on the site. The site is along Milltown Road, which is a collector road within a commercial area, commercial corridor. The use itself generates minimal traffic, and it's significantly less traffic that would be generated than some of the permitted uses in the zone. It does not require a large amount of parking, and it does not thrive on pass-by traffic. It's a large lot. It's actually nearly 1.5 acres more than what is required in the zone at minimum. And there's some buffering along the railroad, as was seen on the architectural renderings, as well as some wooded area, and just the general site configuration adds to the buffering. And there is a fourth round housing and fair share plan has determined that up through 2035, there is an additional obligation of 421 housing units that is expected to be met within the township. So when you're looking at ability to meet local demand under the funeral home management case, I believe that this proposed use will help meet that demand, as well as I find the site to be particularly suited given the location and the size and the configuration. I will then jump into the D4 positive criteria relief, which is per the Randolph Township case, which is, can the site accommodate the excess, they use the term problems, but I try not to use the term problems. I would say the excess intensity that would come with allowing additional floor area ratio than what is already permitted by the zone. So I do find that the site can accommodate this additional FAR. The site is approximately 66,035 square feet, which remains for the additional development when you're taking into consideration the existing R&D building. And the self-storage building itself is 64,010 square feet above grade. And as Mr. Silbert has put on the record, that the additional FAR relief, as well as the story variance, is triggered by that basement level, which is not visible above grade. And it also does not cause any impacts above grade because it's not seen from above grade. It's all within, below the surface. So therefore, I believe that there's really no additional visual impacts or physical impacts regarding the FAR and the story relief. And also of importance here, when you're looking at FAR from a planning perspective, you also have to look at the lot coverage. Sometimes FAR triggers additional lot coverage and they can coincide with one another. And in this case, we're significantly under what is required or permitted in the zone, nearly by half. So I do believe that the floor area ratio can be accommodated on the site given the large tract site, and that FAR is triggered by just that basement level below. So regarding the positive criteria special reasons, I will address it for both D1s as well as the D4. So to satisfy the positive criteria, as a planner, we need to make sure that purposes of the municipal land use law are advanced with this application and the variance relief. And in this case, I do believe multiple purposes are advanced. I'll start with purpose G, which is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for all types of uses. And this site fronts Milltown Road. It's substantially larger than what is required by the zone, well below impervious coverage, and it will be there to serve the broader market of residential that already exists in the area, as well as what is anticipated in terms of the fourth round housing obligation. I feel that purpose H is also advanced to promote the free flow of traffic and to avoid any blight or congestion with the proposed use. Our traffic engineer testified that there was to be really no significant traffic impacts that would rise to the level of adverse or significant with this type of use. It's inherent to the nature of this use that traffic and parking is on the lower end of what is actually permitted in the zone. And then I also believe that purpose M is advanced, and purpose M is to encourage a more efficient use of land. So here, putting this type of development in a commercial area, in an area that's already developed, eliminates a need for additional sprawl or strip-like development, which is leading to a more efficient use of land. So I'll move now into the negative criteria. So there's a two-prong test with planning. The first prong is to ensure that there's no substantial detriment to public good. And I do not believe that there is substantial detriment in this case. Our office at CCG, we've testified on behalf of dozens of self-storage facilities, and one of the inherent nature, one of the I would say attributes of this use is that it is low intensity in nature, and also it is more controlled in terms of the access and systems that control access and the mechanisms associated with that, then would be another type of use, let's say an office or a medical. And that's just generally speaking in our experience. The setback that is requested this evening for the driveway, it's being called a driveway, but in this case, it's really not going to be utilized in the case of a driveway that would be public access in terms of the ingress and egress. It exists for emergency access only. It is located behind the building, and I don't find that the variance relief would rise to the level of substantial detriment in this case. The FAR and story variances, again, do not result in additional above-grade impacts or massing, and therefore do not create adverse impact to the public or adjoining lots. The railroad tracks are there, as well as the existing wooded area that helps the building to blend in a little bit more. They're not there to completely enclose the building or hide it from sightline. A building is permitted to go there. A building could go up to 45 feet. In this case, we're proposing under 45 feet, and I believe the architect has done a really great job trying to integrate the building into the area, given the new color scheme and materials. From a safety standpoint, I believe that the operational nature of the leases will limit the type of service or the type of materials that are stored in those units. We've already testified to that. I believe conditions have been put on the record regarding that. The EIS concluded that there's no anticipated significant environmental impacts regarding this application, and the presence of two principal structures isn't out of line of what's already existing in the area and the pattern that's along this commercial corridor. It's just to state that this would not be unusual or incompatible with the surrounding area to see two principal structures on a large site such as this. And then the last prong of the negative criteria, the second prong, is there's no substantial impairment of the zone plan or the master plan. So the C3 zone permits all types of commercial uses, from medical to service and office uses, and I believe this proposed self-storage facility is commercial in nature. So it's really in line with what is contemplated in this zone. And that moves me into the Medici reconciliation of omission, So according to Medici, under the case law, we must explore why this use was omitted from the list of permitted uses in the zone. And in this case, I believe the reconciliation can come from the fact that this use is consistent with other commercial uses. It's actually less intense in nature than some of the other uses, and it's really not an intentional omission of this use as a prohibited use. It's just that it wasn't contemplated in the creation of this ordinance at the time of its adoption. And I also will also reconcile the omission for the multiple principal structures. And just to go back into detail, just briefly, the 126-330 ordinance at the time of application contemplated permitting multiple structures in non-residential zones going through the site plan process. And of course, the township has recently introduced an amendment to that ordinance, which has not been adopted yet. It's in draft form, and it has no bearing on the vote this evening. But I just wanted to bring that up. While this does not govern the application, it was, at a minimum, in my opinion, created to interpret more clearly this ordinance, which, in my opinion, means that the ordinance in the beginning was open for interpretation. And our opinion was that multiple principal uses could be contemplated in this zone. However, to reconcile, I think that the site is large enough to accommodate two uses. There's no visual impacts, and it does exist as a coordinated development with what is already existing on the site. Lastly, I'll just speak to the consistency of the master plan. I find there to be multiple purposes or goals of the plan, the 2025 Bridgewater Township Master Plan, that are advanced with this application. The master plan states that its goal is to provide a balanced land use pattern of residential, commercial, industrial, and conservation parks and open spaces. And it's also encouraging development within areas that already contain infrastructure, intermodal access, and established pattern of development. So in conclusion, I know I said a lot. It is my professional opinion that the application meets its full burden of proof, that the balancing test has shown that the positive criteria outweigh the negative criteria, and that there will be no substantial detriment to public good or adverse impact to zone plan and master plan. Thank you.
Couple questions. I'm going to start with the E1 relief. Are you aware of a potential loophole in the sense that the applicant could have pursued attaching the buildings so as to avoid two separate buildings?
I am aware of that.
And from a planning standpoint, presenting one building with an R&D facility and self-storage, planning perspective, is that a better plan, or is proposing two separate buildings for this property an appropriate planning?
Alternative?
Yes, alternative.
I would find that the better planning alternative would be to separate them, take advantage of the large tract of land, and not to add additional massing where it's not necessary, especially given the fact that this proposed building has been adjusted to accommodate the requested changes to blend a little bit more into the surrounding area, to the other building that's across the street. So I think it's a great opportunity, actually. Not only do I think it's better to separate them from a massing standpoint, but from a planning, visual impact standpoint. I do believe that.
In terms of going through the positive criteria, you referenced the township's fourth round affordable housing obligations. The municipal land use law, section 2, is not limited to advancing purposes of land use and planning for Bridgewater Township. Is that correct? It's geared towards the community at large?
It's geared towards the community at large.
So you had mentioned the township's fourth round obligations, but the other surrounding municipalities, for the most part, they too, and I'm not going to ask you to testify to it in detail, but they too have fourth round affordable housing requirements that is going into this application, you think, in terms of market demand?
Yes, it just depends on the radius that you're looking at from a market demand standpoint, how far out your radius is going. But yes, other towns have additional housing obligations that they are meeting and potentially could benefit from self-storage facilities located in other townships. It's not solely only for Bridgewater Township residents.
You are aware of other self-storage applications pending in the area, and that, I say the word area, the general vicinity within 10 miles, 20 miles, you're aware of that?
Yes, I've heard of the other application, yes.
Are you handling any of those applications personally?
I am not.
From a planning standpoint, when you're thinking about demand, and you referenced, I believe, did you reference section M of section 2, speaking to that?
Ms. Melandrisco, yes.
Yeah.
Section M, purpose M.
Purpose M, I'm sorry. How do you consider projects that are approved but are not yet built, or projects that are pending?
I usually don't take into consideration projects that don't exist at the moment.
Why?
Well, because it's not meeting the demand at this moment. And I only can go off of what exists from a planning perspective here today.
Okay. So you had also mentioned that there's a number of, you had mentioned that something to do with respect to conditions when a board is considering whether or not to grant variance relief. Explain that further. So with respect to conditions, how does that tie to variance relief?
Yeah, so the board is entitled, especially when it comes, to waivers, variances, to imposing reasonable conditions that would make the relief of that variance be granted by ensuring that, goals are met on both ends.
So, by way of example, a condition prohibiting hazardous materials, is that addressing a concern of a D1 use variance?
Yes, D1 use variances obviously have a large array of types of concerns that you have to address. Safety is one of them, and limiting the type of uses that are going into those storage units by way of leases and other safety mechanisms would address it as concern of a D1.
Limiting hours of operation.
Limiting hours of operation, yes, correct.
Applicant testified to and agreed that there would be no power outlets in any of the respective units. Again, that's an example of a condition that would offset any concerns that you might have with respect to granting a D1 variance.
Yes, so far, the last two hearings that we've had, a lot of the conditions that have been brought to the board or by the board and have been put on record have significantly met the concerns that I would have had from a planning perspective going into the D1 relief.
And to your knowledge, the case law, that's the guidance to the board. The board is to look at a variance and see if they can limit the impact through conditions.
Correct.
Okay. And you feel like that the board has done that here?
I do. I think a lot of back and forth has gone on between both ends again, and I think a lot of constructive conversations have happened, and I do think that a great planning project is being put before the board this evening, and that the burden of proof has been met, in my opinion.
I'm going to speak to a couple of the bulk variances, and I know that you said that the positive criteria in connection with the D1 variances subsumes the positive criteria in connection with these bulk variances, but I just want to speak to those bulk variances with a little more specificity. So one of the bulk variances we're seeking is with respect to the number of stories, where 3 stories is permitted, and we're proposing a 4-story building. As far as the negative criteria is concerned, do you have any concerns with that?
Yeah, and I think I've already gotten into it a little bit, but when we're looking at a variance for floor relief, amount of stories, obviously we also look at the height. And in this case, the height variance is being met. It's not being exceeded. And that story is below ground, so it's not adding to visual impact.
And regarding, and if you touched upon this, I very much apologize. Regarding some of the replacement trees, we are seeking relief for replacement trees. Perhaps looking at from a C1 standpoint, but perhaps not, because it could be considered self-created. But taking into account the site conditions, do you think that the property places limitations on tree replacement, landscaping, just by nature of the sensitive areas in terms of what could be added to the site?
I do, and just for everyone's benefit, what Mr. Silbert just recognized was C1 hardship. It can be argued to any of this variance relief, but the hardship must not be self-created. In this case, we would be creating by adding that additional lane in the back. However, you also look at it from a C2 perspective, and that's why I believe it was subsumed, is yes, there is a hardship in putting additional trees in, because there's no space to put those trees because of that turf in the back, or what's the material again? The stabilized turf in the back. However, there is existing mature tree line there, and I still believe that to be a buffer that exists to support that visual impact. And again, a building could go in here, a medical office at 45 feet, and it maybe has windows all around. Maybe it doesn't have anything that's breaking up the visual impact of it to residents. And I do find you have to look at that too. The architect has ensured that she's worked with the board and the professionals to find an alternative to where it's not having as much of an impact on the residents.
And same thing with landscaping, plantings, like foundation shrubs, et cetera. Do you think that the negative criteria is satisfied with respect to the applicant not being able to provide the full 368 shrubs that are required?
Yeah, so those waivers for landscaping, the burden of proof is the reasonableness to meet the ordinance intent when it comes to waivers. And I do find that the landscaping plan that has been put forward with the application is sufficient.
Okay. And then I'm just going to reference the planner's memo in the sense that they're identified as variances, at least in the report. So by way of example, this might be a waiver, but the loading space dimensions, by way of example, 12 by 50 is required. The fact that we're providing 12 by 38, is that a positive in your opinion?
Yes, it's less impact on the parking area, as well as the fact that the circumstances are requiring smaller, trucks for moving, and it can achieve its goal by being at that smaller dimension than what would be required by ordinance.
So disincentivizes larger trucks we don't want on the property. By providing
Correct,
a smaller
yes.
loading area. Number of signs, we're proposing 2. Why are we proposing 2? Is it by nature of the number of access points to the site?
Yes, and I do find those to be adequate, and also to draw, as much attention as required for wayfinding and commercial needs, but also to minimize site visual clutter. So I find that the number of signage is adequate.
And then I believe that the number of loading spaces, we needed potential relief for that, where 4 is required, we're only providing 2. Do you believe that variance is supported just by virtue of the traffic testimony
Correct, by nature of the operational use and the intention of having the types of sizes of trucks and the minimal loading that is required for this use.
Okay. And you think that would disincentivize more intense warehousing uses that you've heard concerns regarding?
I do.
All right, I might have jumped ahead if you had more to go on to, so if you have any more to conclude, I'd cut you off
No.
if you had more testimony.
Yeah, what I put on the record concluded my direct testimony, so I'm absolutely open to any questions from you or, the board and the public.
Thank you. No, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions from the board members for Ms. Shepherd? Please.
From your perspective as a planner, I am not asking you an architectural question. Would it be desirable and is it feasible to line the back of the property with trees to double or reflect what's on the railroad property and then do the required fire lane and then do the building? Is that something that you would look for, is feasible? Do trees threaten that fire lane? Any of the above?
So we did not look at an option of moving the building or shrinking the building to accommodate additional tree line. Again, what I look at is, does the tree line that exists in its current, mature nature, does that provide a buffer? And I think it does. And of course, it's completely open to interpretation if it's an adequate enough buffer. But in my opinion, I don't necessarily think we didn't look at providing additional trees by moving the building. We've only really assessed the footprints that have been before the board. So I wouldn't be able to speak to adding additional trees there and how that would really impact.
I think I can attempt to address one of the concerns was imposing the front yard setback and moving the building forward, particularly with respect to the parking spaces in the front. Not necessarily, and I'd have to verify that, not necessarily with the building structure itself, but I believe the ordinance, and we will double check. I think it's restricted with the location of the parking spaces. We're trying to be cognizant of that setback. We did not locate the building closer to Milltown Road because that would have effectuated additional relief. But if the board's concerned with buffering and trees to the rear of the building, if that far outweighs the concerns the board might have with having parking space located closer.
Perhaps a compromise would be
Then
good.
we would certainly entertain increasing that setback beyond the 24 feet that's proposed. It's just, there's a relationship there where.
I see. I see. But also a compromise on the size of the building could accommodate more trees. Yes?
It could.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Rose?
As I understand it from your testimony and from the testimony we've heard before, what's driving the floor area ratio is the need to have X number of units inside the building in order to make it profitable. Is that an accurate statement?
I can't speak to that.
Okay, would you like to?
Yes. I don't think you heard testimony that it was the number of storage units. I think you heard testimony, you're saying the same thing. We were saying the last hearing that as part of the consideration for any project, the floor area is taken into consideration square footage of the building. And your question, you referred to the number of units. That's not necessarily what.
Okay, so I'll get more specific.
Thank you.
Okay, if I can. The number of square feet
Yes.
per floor is driven by monetary benefits.
It's a consideration of any project. That's not the sole consideration. And that's not the proofs that were put on the record just now as to why we think that the square footage would advance Section 2 of the Municipal Land Use Law. But it would be disingenuous to say to you that square footage is not considered with any developer's project. It absolutely always is.
Okay, so let me try going at this another way, a different way perhaps. floor area ratio limits in our ordinances determines the size of buildings to be put on a piece of land. Can we agree on that? Okay. So, is it not the applicant's obligation to make sure that what they're putting before us as the Board of Adjustment is a project that fits? It may have other issues, it may need other kinds of variances or whatever, but it doesn't need a floor area ratio because someone on the team has determined that they can build a building on this piece of property that's, how many stories? 3 stories, although very creative. I love the idea of the basement, but I'm not quite sure I buy it. But anyway, it's a very creative idea. Not heard that before. Anyway, but that has an obligation to fit the project on the piece of land that you're looking to put it upon. And if we had all of these applications come, I mean, what is the purpose of having floor area ratio limits if we keep saying, well, okay, it's not really that bad, but essentially you're building, the applicant wishes to build a building on this particular piece of property that is too large for the property. Can I make that statement? Because if it wasn't too large, you wouldn't need a floor area ratio.
Yeah, so the D4 variance relief equates its own relief through a specific burden of proof, and that is, can the site accommodate additional floor area ratio and not cause substantial detriment? And what I put on the record, based on the fact that this is triggered by the basement, in my opinion, really satisfies that burden of proof. I can't speak generally to what applicants should and should not come before the board. This case in particular, that's what I was looking at, and I've testified on behalf of dozens of FAR where they actually expand outwards, and you're really triggering a lot of site activity or intensity with that additional FAR. In this case, it's kind of a technical variance in that sense. So, but that's why the D4 burden of proof exists. And I do feel like I met that with the testimony, and I apologize if I'm not answering your question.
No, you answered it. I just have a different opinion, but I'm not a planner. I'm a social worker by trade.
That's what I went to school for, social work.
Is there a use on this property because of the intensity of the use? As a planner, you would look at that use and say, you know what, a D4 variance is not appropriate because of the use or something. Is there any use in the world that you would say for this property, because of the increase in traffic or because of the impacts that would be associated with departing from the ordinance's requirement that it's 30%, that as a planner you would say a D4 is not appropriate?
Yes, there are opportunities where that wouldn't be applicable, and typically I wouldn't be before a board if I felt that way. But in this case, given the use itself and the inherent attributes of the use and the way that this is situated, I feel that this to be an adequate representation of a D4 variance relief.
So let's say a permitted use was before this board. Let's say it was medical office.
Mm-hmm. Same burden of proof.
Same burden of proof, but as a planner, do you think from what you've heard during the course of this testimony that a D4 variance would be supported for a permitted use?
Yes.
You even though the office impact is substantially greater in terms of traffic?
I'm looking specifically at the floor area ratio, yeah.
But what I'm asking you is that if an office use generates significantly more traffic,
Mm-hmm.
it's permitted. The ordinance permits it, and an applicant goes before the board and says, I want to build more office than what's permitted. In that situation, would you think that the site's appropriate given the amount of traffic that's associated with that type of use?
I would have to know more about the case, but after hearing a little bit more of an elaboration on it, probably not.
So you're not just looking at a mathematical number.
It's so many other factors that contribute to our variance relief, yes.
Mr. Silver, I would have a problem with that floor area ratio.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
the other thing I think that's worth mentioning, and we've heard testimony to this as well, is that floor area ratio is simply just not a mathematical computation. It applies to the intensity of the use, the mass of the building, the visual impact, and so on. And in this case, because you have the basement level, which is not visible, you have them meeting the height requirements, floor area ratio becomes less of a mathematical calculation and more of an overall interpretation of the intent of having limits on floor area ratio. But I'm going to now ask Ms. Soymad, who is our planner, to see if she has any questions. Well, let me ask her to go first, and then you can come after her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make sure, I think there was other design waivers or relief that were identified in my review letter based upon the ordinance requirements for the number of loading spaces as well. I'm not sure if that was clarified, as well as the sign setback.
Yeah. So the number of loading spaces, 4 is required.
Yes.
And Ms. Shepherd, can you, we did address it, but can you?
No, I just wanted to make sure that they were captured.
Oh, it was. What wasn't captured?
Yes.
With the existing sign that we failed to get relief for in connection with the prior application.
No, this is a separate sign.
We are proposing a separate sign. Well, what happened was when we went to the board the first time, the planning board, there was a sign that was approved, and the appropriate variance relief was not sought or granted for that sign. And I believe that's where the setback concern is. It's within a sign that was already approved and exists on the property, but for which.
No, it's the proposed sign at the second driveway.
Yeah, your proposed sign is 10 feet.
It needs to be 20 feet.
I thought we had brought that.
I believe it was covered, but I just wanted to, I wasn't sure. My notes don't show anything about that being eliminated, so.
Yeah, so we can speak to that right now.
Yeah, so again, if the sign setback, I believe, was notified in your letter as a waiver. And again, does the reasonableness of meeting that ordinance intent with this waiver, I do find that the setback, in this case, being 10 feet would be reasonable in terms of its accommodation for ingress and egress for commercial as well as wayfinding purposes. And I don't think that that 10 feet would substantiate into any sort of traffic or circulation or site concerns that would cause any impacts.
I thought the location of the sign was based on the water company hotline. Remember the testimony of Mr. Michello?
I apologize, we've gone through a couple of iterations of the site plan, so I apologize if I'm not speaking to the correct
Mr. Franco, I think you are correct. There is a concrete pad shown, further back, and it would conflict visually with that.
That was my understanding.
Yes.
Of the location.
Yes. Thank you for the testimony on that, and to clarify. And I just wanted to clarify for the board, my opinion on the ordinance as it exists and applies to this application, because I did do some research and did look through the code. And while section 126-330 is not direct, it is related to other sections of the code that also say that if a use is not permitted, like multiple permitted uses, then it's expressed, then it's not permitted in any zone. And in the case of other zones in the township, there are allowances in like the C7 zone that allow more than one principal use, or multiple principal uses in a building, or multiple principal uses on a site. And so by the absence of that in the C3 zone, my interpretation was, well, it doesn't permit multiple principal uses. So that's just a clarification that I don't believe it's an interpretation. It's just a matter of that it's not located in one spot. If we're comparing it to the ordinance that has been introduced at the council, which puts it all in one spot, essentially, for clarification. But I don't think it changes any meaning of how the code exists right now. It just puts it in one spot explicitly. One question to start with the use variance that's being requested. It hasn't really been addressed, and I don't think the testimony you provided addressed it, but the zoning of the office building that's on the site right now, which is an office research building, is a permitted use in the C3 zone. Effectively, if this board approves this application, that permitted use in the zone would be zoned into nonconformity by way of the D1 use variance. because it is treated as one property, because the applicant has opted not to subdivide the property, it is a single property, and therefore that use would then have to come back before the zoning board if it changed in any way, shape, or form. And I just wanted to get your understanding, is that a detriment to the township zone plan, or is that, good planning practice?
I appreciate that question. So, I mean, obviously, there is meaning behind not subdividing the properties, and I feel as though if that existing permitted use is, and Mr. Silbert can chime in if he feels inclined, but if that is being zoned into nonconformity, any changes that would happen, obviously, like to your point, they would need to come before the board. If I'm weighing that in terms of the benefits of the application at hand, I wouldn't say that is substantial. However, it does change the nature of how that is operating. But
Wouldn't you just say, though, that now and forever, this board has more
in the nature of the application.
say of any nature of the application, where if the site, as a conforming site, goes before the planning board, you're looking at a simple majority, versus now you're still going before a board either way if you want to change the site.
Exactly.
I just want to clarify, I'm not talking about it being before the zoning board. I'm talking about zoning a permitted use into nonconformity and how that relates to the zone plan.
Yeah, you mean if a permitted use were to go there? Yeah, if a permitted use, so this exists as an opportunity to put something in there, whether it's permitted or not permitted. So if it were a permitted use that were being proposed here, it would still, I believe, be before the board if any changes were to occur on site.
And if it was a permitted use, it could have far more impact to the community.
On a case-by-case basis, yeah, it would need to be assessed on a case-by-case.
Well, look at the uses that are permitted.
Yeah, medical.
Office, services, essential services, R&D, lab.
Yeah, those are more high intense in nature. So I think it would have to be considered on a case-by-case basis. But in terms of being permitted, the use that we are proposing with this application, or that the applicant is proposing, is far less intense. And I think in terms of coinciding or being symbiotic in nature, this use that we're proposing being less intense is absolutely less detrimental in terms of its intensity than what is permitted in the zone.
And just outside of the township zone plan, but, more generally related to case law and looking at the Cox book as a guide to land use law, it does note that, municipalities should zone or should do development by zoning, by their zone plan. They should avoid and to fix nonconformities where possible. And so in relation to that, does that change any of your opinion about your last response and, how this will affect, or, the impact on zoning by use variance, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at all of that when we're considering a nonconforming intensification, or if we're introducing a nonconforming use. But we're looking at it as each case rising and falling on its own case basis. And in this case, I don't think it changes my testimony.
Okay, thank you. I'd asked Mr. Michello this question early on. I don't know if it was the first hearing or the second hearing, but I had asked basically if he'd undertaken an analysis, if the property was subdivided, looking at the proportionality of the site and which part of it has, what the FAR would look like in that case, because FAR is a proportional calculation. And so I just, are wondering if you had undertaken any kind of FAR analysis to understand the proportionality of this building.
I've only looked at the site as it's been proposed, not with a potential subdivision, as we didn't entertain that. So I wouldn't have any comment on what that FAR would accommodate.
Okay. So if I ask you, hypothetical numbers, or would you be surprised about certain calculations, would you be able to respond to them or no?
I wouldn't have a
Then I won't
baseline in my mind, yeah.
I won't do that. And did you undertake any other analysis if it were subdivided, not just FAR, but any other setbacks or any other things that would alleviate the other variance for the number of principal buildings on the site?
I've only given my assessment based on the site plans that have been before me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stilbert had asked you if the constraints on the property limited the ability to provide things like landscaping. And I want to turn that question a little bit to say, do you do you believe that the size of the building is more constraining to the ability to provide site improvements like a proper driveway setback, like the amount of landscaping required, rather than the site itself being constrained, but more so based upon the way that the use is proposed right now in the size structure that it's proposed?
You know, I look at obviously the floor area ratios before the board for a variance. That's really, in my mind, a technical planning variance as it's underneath. I'm looking at the building height, I'm looking at the massing, I'm looking at the lot coverage, and we're well within that. So I haven't entertained looking at the building being proposed smaller, especially given the testimony that's been on the record the last two cases, with the intention of keeping that square footage as it is and changing around the accommodations within. I have not assessed, from a planning perspective, anything less than what's been proposed with the site plans.
You think fundamentally that if the building were smaller, other things besides the building could fit on the property?
If the building were smaller and reconfigured across the site in such a way, then yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's also possible to keep the building footprint and make it FAR compliant, right?
Exactly, the building footprint, and it can meet the FAR requirement as well, yes.
So if the applicant did eliminate the basement,
It would still meet the same,
got rid of the dreaded FAR variance,
we would be below the permitted square footage.
And
And we would not be triggering an FAR.
and to take Ms. Armad's question further, because it's certainly true, even in that situation, the building could be made smaller theoretically, even though it's conforming with the FAR. And just like any project, by making the building smaller, you could add more trees, more landscaping. That's just a fact of any application that goes before a board.
Absolutely, yes. In theory, yes. Building being made smaller, you could make changes. But again, I've only assessed as the site plans have been provided with the square footage and the and the bulk variances that we have in front of you today.
I guess what my point is that, and it's more of it's certainly a question to you. It's not the FAR limitation that is driving the other variances, because we can comply with the FAR requirements, and yet we would still need those other deviations.
Yes, it's the environmental constraints, it's the site configuration, it's the existing infrastructure on the site and existing buffering and everything that's already there. It's not necessarily the FAR that's constraining.
And my question was not about the FAR. My question was about, could you fit the other things on the site? I did not bring up FAR, so I just want to clarify that. It was
Yeah,
about-
theoretically, yes.
It was about the footprint of the building and its relation to setbacks and open space areas where you could provide landscaping, where I think right now there's zero opportunity based on the way it's laid out. And I was just asking if if it was a different configuration, would there be an opportunity?
I do think that the landscaping plan that has been provided, they did a great job with what's been proposed, and I think the conditions that were put on about introducing additional trees where adequate, I think meet the intention of the tree ordinance and make, what could be put on that property if the building were to be smaller.
And that's a good segue, because I was going to ask a question about the landscaping, because the property is not subdivided, but the development on this side of the condo line is where most of it is proposed, or most of the development is proposed. Did you look at the landscaping plan and see how much of the landscaping is actually being provided on the other portion of the property in front of the other building that exists on the property?
I mean, as a planner, I only looked at our site.
Well, and the landscaping replacement is actually required based on the amount of disturbance, so it would be related really to the area in which the disturbance is. I'm not saying a variance is required, but I'm just saying fundamentally the landscaping is intentional, or I would say is intended to replace what was disturbed. And I didn't know if you looked at the landscaping plan to see that a good share of it is actually not on this portion of the property.
I looked at the landscaping plan, and I looked to how it met the visual aesthetics and the impact on the site overall. In terms of how much is on the one side and how much is on the other, I can't really attest to that, but overall, I do think it's a pattern of presented landscape that is appropriate for the overall aesthetics of the site.
And just one final question to wrap it up in relation to the culmination of all the site improvements that are seeking, a deviation from the ordinance or relief in some form. And the notes that, we've had this discussion about the constraints on the site whether it be the existing infrastructure, existing building, the wetlands and environmental encumbrances, the railroad tracks, the requirement to do a fire lane, and the inability to do the number of landscaping. In your opinion, your professional opinion, do you believe that this site is particularly suited for the use as required under the proofs? Do you think, with all that in mind, that it leads it to say that this use and the form in which it's proposed is particularly suited for this site?
Absolutely. I stand by the testimony I put on the record.
Thank you very much. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, it's late in the evening. A couple of quick things. We would still have to have Ms. Shepherd come back for questions from the public. Does that pose a problem for you? Okay. Pardon?
We just need to know what date.
Yes, we'll get to that. Any quick questions? I know Mr. Mignola.
My one question is, you took into account, the future affordable housing needs, and you're looking at that for, is this a desirable thing for our area? Did you consider this radius compass report that we received as this week from Mr. Silver?
Yes, I did read through that, and generally, from a market analysis standpoint, it did show that within 1 mile, there were no self-storage facilities. Obviously, some may be proposed, but as of now, no. But I think generally, when I was testifying to the need, I'm speaking, overall, not just necessarily the affordable housing, but the growth pattern in the area in general. And that report does have findings that support that.
And, this report does not have any kind of summary. It's just a bunch of numbers, correct?
Yeah, if one of the tidbits that comes from that is that within 1 mile, there's currently no self-storage facility in the area, and despite approximately 8,400 residents and 3,266 households. That was kind of one of the general findings of the report.
I can ask Mr. Silbert, do you intend to get somebody to explain this report?
So the principal, the applicant, alluded to the report in his testimony, saying that the report is what drove his, somewhat drove his programming to his civil engineer, to his architect. What I can do is I can have a real estate professional testify, obviously not this evening, to the contents of that report. This professional did not prepare the report, but can testify to what one can extrapolate from the report. If the board would like that testimony, I can certainly put that on at the next hearing. I think that there's been discussion about whether the market is driving the size of the project, and I don't think that I can get a real estate expert to testify to that standpoint, because I think that the market's driving any type of real estate project in the municipality. So in terms of what to take away from the market demand from the Compass report, yes, can get someone to testify to it. In terms of, does the market dictate that 36% FAR is required and not?
No, I'm not asking that, because as you know, there's other proposals before this board, one that's got an extension, one that's also pending. And frankly, like I said, this report has a lot of numbers, but it doesn't speak to me because I don't know what this really means.
Let's get someone here that can speak directly to the numbers you see in the report.
Very well, thank you. So we're going to end tonight's session shortly. When we come back, we're going to pick up with any additional questions that the board might have, but we now then would ask the public to pose questions to your planner, Ms. Shepherd, about her testimony when we return. So with that, Ms. Probst, do we have a date that we can agree upon?
Next date we would be able to schedule this on is November 10th.
November 10th?
They would share the meeting with Cafe Amelia that evening.
Sounds familiar. Sorry. You're asking me if this case would be first? I would say right now, yes. Yeah, unless things change. I don't know, you tell me.
Right now, because I believe it's the one time of the entire year I'm not in town. I mean, look, the applicant would definitely take that date. I'd have to find coverage from my end. But would definitely take the
Little musical interlude.
good sign, right?
So I'm sorry, you're saying the date is acceptable?
We'll take it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Oler.
Okay, so for purposes of the public, this meeting is concluding now. It will continue on November 10th at 7 PM in this room without further notice from the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? And we have a second, anybody? Second, Ms. Rose. And all in favor? Aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.